All right, we are live. We here. Hello,
Are we
everyone.
though?
Yes, we are. We survived. Well, not all of us.
Did we? Did we survive, Alex?
No, and I'm still very sad about it. Still very upset.
That was oof, that ending. That
Do your intro, Alex. We can make you feel bad about forgetting about poor Florence later.
Well, my character doesn't know what happened. As far as I know, she's gone.
That's right.
So, but anyway, hello, welcome. We are Negative Modifier, tabletop RPG podcast that records our live play sessions for fun, and Charlie is our resident GM who likes to torture us.
I do.
But the tortures are like wholesome tortures, like
Are they?
like what's it called? Like Adam Sandler's Nicky the Devil kind of thing, you know? Like it's kind of wholesome torture, you know?
I challenge you to find in that movie where Nikki stranded someone at the end of time. I dare you to find that.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, we're Negative Modifier. Let's first of all, before we continue further, let's introduce the whole cast.
We should do that.
So I already said Charlie is our GM. We also have Dylan, who played Agent Florence. And of course, we have our resident 2 character. We had Father Faustus / Agent Firestarter, Jad, is on this side here. There we go. I'm just trying to make sure I get the angles right for like the capture. But yes, and I'm Agent Foxtrot, aka John. So, yeah, we are Negative Modifier. So, welcome. This is our post. Is it post campaign or just post Malin? Like, what are we going with?
Yes,
Are we just doing post?
like the campaign is over with Malin, or Milan, as the one French person that got really mad at my pronunciation told me that they are correct. That's the correct way of pronouncing it. But I figured, hey, our friend in that basement's not any smarter not to call it Malin. So, and yeah, I'm going with that too. So, yeah. No, yes, this is the end of the campaign. It's also the end of Malin. Reality is Hawthorne's Crusade fits awkwardly on the little title card thing we use, so welcome to the post-show for Malin, which is also the end of the Crusade, so prepare for spoilers for the entire damn thing, and as I've been saying for the last week or so, I'm not going to be deliberately vague this time. I will actually answer questions truthfully.
Yeah, we're calling it the Declassified episode, which is, I guess, what we're going to be calling our end of campaign
It's a good
episodes.
name for it.
It is a very good name for it. By the way, shout outs to Jad for coming up with that one, because that was clutch. We were like, what do we call the stream? And Jad's like, oh, just call it Negative or Hawthorne's Crusade Declassified. And I was like, ooh, that hit. So yes.
I do have to put a small asterisk into what I just said. If it pertains to our next season of Delta Green, I will still be annoyingly vague about it. Except for the fact it's called Janus Protocol and expect it in the nearest future. Not anytime soon, but maybe before the end of the year or very soon after the year ends. But yes.
Yeah. So
I'm not here to talk about that, though.
We get to talk about all the fun, like, things we didn't know about, spoilers, things of that nature. I guess spoilers for Hawthorne's Crusade, but not Janus.
Well, yes, and we do owe our dear listeners a story. The Wendigo story. The much teased, many referenced. I said we'd do it at this live stream. It is finally time for the Wendigo story, the lost intro, if you will, to Hawthorne's Crusade. Is it accurate to say you thought we were playing, but no.
Oh, the Wendigo.
my rude awakening to
Welcome to Delta Green.
Yeah, tabletop culture shock. I'm just immediately just gonna start off with that, because going from fantasy sci-fi to something a little bit more grounded, and something a little bit more grounded with Delta Green was that was a transition.
Yes. So as we've teased several times, there is a kind of, I don't call it the lost episode, because it was never recorded to be the lost episode. It just, I recorded it because I'm like, maybe it'll be fun to do something with it eventually, but the audio quality was bad. It doesn't really relate to the story that much, aside for it's how Firestarter and Florence and Francis actually know each other. Basically, it was a chance to kind of mix the groups up some. I played with Jad, I played with Alex some, I played with Dylan in various kind of groups. It's like, okay, let's give an operation. If it turns out good, cool. If it turns out to be a goddamn nightmare, also cool. We just won't do anything with it. But it became kind of some of the hidden lore of Hawthorne's Crusade, and it's one of those things where kind of like, in most games, doing that just seems obtuse and weird. In Delta Green, where it's like, no, this is an operation we're not going to talk about ever. That's totally normal, and
yeah,
it's a fun one. Yeah,
I feel like, and maybe this is not the right way to compare it, but like the Wendigo story was like our Star Wars Christmas special.
Yes, that's pretty, names and all. Yes, Is it definitely me trying to like hit people in the throat with my elbow in like a brawl at one point? Yes, it is. It is messy. It was never meant to see the light of day, but we've been asked to explain it, and I'm gonna miss some of the more specific details. But basically, it's the story of 3 new agents cast into Delta Green, not so aware of what Delta Green is, sent to investigate a series of murders in a rural New Hampshire town, and in just a truly stellar bad run of luck, one of those agents gets killed within hours of arriving in this town, and then another agent gets infected with Wendigoism. And that sets up the real story of, well, the Wendigo story, which is when Francis and Florence joined the group to kind of do the mixing more. And Alex got stuck playing a character that had the human flesh addiction disorder for a couple sessions, and just really wanting to eat someone. And there were morgues, and there was a beef jerky shack that was definitely put up by the Wendigo, and kind of, it's one of those things where kind of like, what's the antithesis of Delta Green? Oh, it's an agent standing in the middle of a morgue with a person whose body's been kind of caved open like a rib cage, or like, not it is a rib cage, but kind of like they've been pulled open to get access to the good bits inside, and having to stand there and be like, man, I'm feeling really hungry right now. Anyone else hungry? Anyone else want a burger or something, or like a human leg?
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about the morgue part. I remember the jerky hut, or the Wendigo jerky hut, which sounds like a great company name at some point. But
Wendigo jerky, it's not people.
Yeah. But yeah, that was so that was my character that had the human flesh obsession after I was infected, because I didn't die. The other agent was the one who died, and I was the one who happened to survive, and then I had a weird obsession with food.
Did you though? Like, did you though?
Two people. We technically that operation had 3 dead by the end of it. Alex's characters died. Someone who didn't want to join the cast wound up dying. Sorry, no. Florence and Francis killed Alex's character.
Yeah,
she wanted to eat that other body.
Yeah.
Preventative doctoring.
I totally thought that you had your character. Both those characters died during like that team split. Oh, never mind. The one character died. Your what was it again? Mind something? Microdose. Agent Microdose.
Yes, it was M-Cell, yeah.
Yeah.
Agent Microdose had like was at near death. And then
it was near death.
Wendigoism healed that man and brought him back into the fight. Yes, the benefits of Wendigoism.
I remember I was healed fully quick, and then I remember I was involved in a bar fight where I like punched the guy across the bar because I.
So to add some context, when a character becomes infected, diseased with Wendigoism, their stats go up significantly. Their strength goes up to 20, if I remember correctly. Like it's one of those ones where it's like, aside from the fact that when you finish the operation, your character goes crazy and kills / murders / eats all of your bonds, because that's what Wendigos do. In the moment, it's super useful because a bunch of your stats just go up to max. Where it's like, hey, you're a Wendigo now. You have tons of strength.
Yeah. I remember when actually, so I don't know if we haven't shared this story yet, but I remember maybe like an hour before that play session post Wendigo healing happened, Charlie messages me and he's like, hey, there have been some changes to your character sheet. Go take a look.
With no context provided beyond that. I've made some changes.
He was just like,
Just
yeah.
thought I'd let you know.
And then I go and check, and my strength had gone to the roof, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And then we got put in a situation where there was a bar fight, and then, yeah. And I think that's the only time I actually used my strength, which is a little sad.
No, there was a couple other times. Like,
Was there?
It was increasingly suspicious, where it's like, okay, pushing a guy, he could stumble. Like, you ripped a door off its hinges at one point
That's
or something,
right.
where it's like, that's not physically possible. Yes, it is if you have Wendigoism.
Didn't I rip the boards off a boarded up window too at some point?
Yes. We should find a crowbar. Let me pull it. Yeah, he just does that. It was one of those moments where we were like, how did he do that? And I'm like, I'm not telling anything. But yes, the Wendigo story became a kind of a delving, a light dive into some Native American folklore of the bastardized types you can get in New Hampshire as part of tourist attractions, ending in an abandoned ski lodge that had been turned into a meat smoking hut by the Wendigo. And there were some hints at, maybe the Wendigo's still a Wendigo, but it's not the big problem here. But when half the team is dead, one of those members, courtesy of friendly fire, is preventative doctoring. You just leave at that point. It's like, yeah, we dealt with the problem. Go, get out. And you got Miss Pine going, we want you to study Wendigoism as it unfolds. And then handle it.
Yeah.
That was really funny because we came in and you did a little intro with Francis and Florence, and Pine was like, hey, so Wendigos are real and we need you to study what's happening to one of our agents and then, deal with it.
When it seems to become a problem, handle the problem.
Yeah. Which, by the way, so Florence's track record with guns isn't that great, but clutch moment in the Wendigo storyline for Florence, as I recall. Because didn't you get like a perfect roll or like a crit
it was a
or
max
something?
damage shotgun shell. It was
Up until that point, like when Charlie and I had played in games before, Florence is like never shot a gun before and like super nervous around them. And then we started the Wendigo fight, and she'd been carrying guns around the entire time but never shot it once. And then, we're in the middle of the Wendigo fight. Wendigo's about to go and kill one of us. I roll a crit max damage on a shotgun shot and kill the thing. So it was a good I guess moment for her to just accept that guns are part of the job.
Yeah, and what a clutch roll! Like, it was so good.
Real quick question: have either Alex, Dylan, have either of you had experience with Delta Green before that session?
Well, okay, yes and no. Technically, yes, because it was the second Delta Green story I played. The first one was the one where I went into the pipe and threw a ladder at the...
on the YouTube channel, there's Alex's first Delta Green experience, which was just kind of like, let's record something. If it's good, I'll put it up. Like, it's no longer on the podcast channel because it's just not great audio quality and stuff. But it's on the YouTube if you want to go check that. It's got the neon green septic tank as the thumbnail for it.
Yeah, that was technically my first time, but I guess my whole exposure to Delta Green has been through Charlie. Like prior to that, I didn't even know it was a thing. So
okay,
the best way to play Delta Green.
So my previous experience before that was
I
a
forgot
very arcade
use the correct phrase: hyper retro neon arcade edition Delta Green.
What?
Neon retro arcade edition Delta Green, where shit was just happening all one.
There's where I just kind of basically threw the rulebook over my shoulder, like, fuck it, yeah, you're hitting stuff with guns, go for it.
Yeah. So the way that it tracked was basically because the group that I play with is trying to herd geese sometimes. I love the boys, absolutely love the boys. But it was one of those moments where Charlie had to pick us up and put us on a House of the Dead moving track to just get the game going.
What?
And, just it was it's a rail shooter at that point. But then taking that experience and then trying to plug it into here, I was everyone's showing up with Agent Francis, Agent Florence, Agent Microdose, and I'm here oh, I fucked up. Why did I name myself Agent McGangbang?
That's right.
Part of why the episode did not wind up in the podcast feed was definitely that
You could
name.
have told me.
Oh no, you had to learn.
It's mainly due to McDonald's concerns because they're.
I don't have that type of lawsuit money.
Yeah.
The name was funny, but also No.
That was really great, like, role-playing, too, because, like, Florence and Francis came in and we heard gangbang, and they were like, what?
What are you, stupid?
Firestarter has never been a clever individual.
Oh yeah, but yes, that was the Wendigo story. I got executed at the end of it all, which was fun.
Yeah, any operation that ends with like 2 Delta Green agents throwing a 3rd Delta Green agent into a rental car, burning a hotel, burning a shitty motel room, and an extra rental car to cover the tracks. Like the entire end of that basically was, okay, cool. These agents are dead. What do? We burn the motel room, the extra rental car, and leave.
Yeah.
We actually, Francis and Florence had like a 5-minute conversation after we killed Microdose about whether or not we were going to kill McGangbang too. But we decided not to.
No evidence must be left.
A really good decision not to kill him, it turns out.
He matured into a truly competent agent.
And that was where, like, after Faustus had passed, I speak as if Faustus was a real character. He might be real to you, but like after
we all were sad when he died.
100%.
If he died.
After Faustus, I was like, you know what? I need retribution. I need to redeem this shit character that I had made. And
and I think kind of to tie it back into the actual podcast we do, and actually Hawthorne's Crusade and stuff, that got to play out in real time. Basically, you got to kind of see an agent who maybe had a rough start, that like not really important to the character now, but you kind of get to see that dynamic of, hey, you have people that like are used to this guy kind of being maybe not a mess, but like, yeah, you really didn't know what you were getting yourself into, and choices were made, and you got a little bit of kind of the, okay, what does time in T-Cell do to a person? Oh, that's what it does to a person.
Also, I think it was just funny at that time. Especially just because, like, the reintroduction of just like, hey, look, cool, old work buddies.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I kind of imagine that happens in Delta Green. Like, if Delta Green was real, that would be a thing where it's like, oh, hey, we worked together before. Cool. You're alive still. Congrats.
Oh, yeah. That was a shame. I like Microdose, but it was a good death.
Yeah. Once you are infected with Wendigoism, it's a ticking clock till the end of the operation, because even the rules are like, yeah, don't make them Wendigo out immediately. That's too disruptive. But like, really have some fun with the fact that one of your characters now wants to eat a person. Doesn't matter which one, and when it comes time to talk about the fallout, have them have a nice dinner with their closest bond, their spouse, their children, whatever, and have them eat them there. And then they run off into the woods, and there's your next Delta Green operation.
Although
this is actually in the rulebook for the record, not in those exact words, but they're like, we encourage you to think along these lines.
So I noticed you said something earlier, and I want to call it out here real quick. You said, when we were talking about Father Faustus just now, you said if he died.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so I'm not fucking crazy. What happened to Father? Okay, we know what happened to Father Faustus in the game. Is there other lore involved with Father Faustus right now that we're not aware of?
What you're talking about?
No, bullshit. You said this is declassified. It says it in the title.
There's an asterisk.
There is an asterisk.
There is no asterisk in the title. Oh no.
He put a footnote.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me we haven't seen the last of Father Faustus?
Seeing as our next Delta Green operation will be the kind of culmination of whatever the hell it has been that Nair Lethbridge has been doing in the background. If you've not listened to J-Cell yet, I recommend you go back and listen to some J-Cell stuff. There may be some recurring characters from that. There will definitely be a returning character or two from this, not played by anyone, but some references to them.
Danny.
Do you get how many questions I've gotten since Danny about people asking, is Danny okay now? Like, did Danny get his life together? And that's the number one question I get sent on Twitter, and like in direct messages. It's like, I know you can't say it in the main thing, but like, is Danny okay now? And I'm like, we will cover this when the campaign is over, damn it. And the answer is no, but he's doing better than he was.
I mean, honestly, like, the great thing about Delta Green is you probably have never actually seen the last of anyone.
Yeah.
There's always something that can happen that brings them back.
Yeah, I guess like we're kind of answering some of the questions I've gotten sent about like, hey, can you answer this like when all things are said and done? And a lot of this stuff you can blame on Impossible Landscapes coming out right as I was finishing up prep for Hawthorne's Crusade, I think, and it basically just said, yo, time travel, and I'm like, oh, I can do time travel, or I can do like weird time travel shenanigans. And they're like, yes. Also, here's kind of how we at Arc Dream think a Delta Green campaign should end. And I'm like, okay, cool. We can go horribly bleak.
All right. I think
Yeah.
any kind of returning character, I'm just going to posit this out there. If there is a small chance of running into Danny again, if I end up breaking because of another lost sanity point by that character, I'm just going to leave the game. I'm just going to close my screen and just leave.
Those sanity
Derail the
breaks.
campaign. The campaign's now to kill Danny. Danny is too dangerous to have out there.
No, I didn't want to spoil this for you guys, but I've been talking to Charlie. Danny's going to be my new character. I'm kidding.
Oh, I'll say.
I think you'd have to knife fight Jad for that. Like,
No, I'm set on a character idea for Janice. I'm all set.
So technically, my character wouldn't be coming back. It'd have to be a new character,
no,
right?
yeah, they are done. They're off doing their kind of separate thing. Which
Okay.
That may be referenced, but yeah. So I guess to kind of explain some of the endings of Hawthorne's Crusade, FCL has been dispersed. They're being sent off to kind of do their own specialized things. In the words of Tranche, Foxtrot has some very specific skills, and I've made some references to our dear friends at March Technologies a few times, and they won't be a major player in the next season, but will be eventually getting into the fine fellows at March Technology. If you're up on your Delta Green lore, that's what honestly the ultimate bad guys that are still human in the setting became ultimately. Like, there's a whole other crazy thing I don't want to go into because we will eventually get to that stuff when we do some stuff that takes place in the 90s and 80s. Like, we're gonna do some cowboy era stuff.
Hell yeah.
But just not yet. That'll probably be the next major arc after a couple other things I got cooking in the background. But yeah.
Okay. So
Let's talk about Malin / Hawthorne's Crusade now, though. We've kind of danced around the thing we just got done dealing with or putting out or finishing off. And we also have the post-show episode, which thank you all for listening to that. I'm always surprised when people are like, I want to hear all the spoilers that you guys are thinking of at this exact moment of recording it. Like, it's always... I record that because I know that we all have fun talking about that. It's always kind of fun to be like, oh, here's some character stuff that, like, we just never got to that was playing out, and we're all like, oh, wow! We all were terrible people! Was Foxtrot the best person?
I was trying to not sell, but like I was trying to explain the podcast to my tattoo artist.
Oh, good God.
Because I was like, yeah, this is the thing, like we do, it's great. I'm going to record like a Q&A later today. He was like, oh, what's it about? And it's like, oh yeah, well, this happened, and let me tell you about Vicky.
No.
Ever heard a long-winded conspiracy theorist go off about stuff? Okay, yeah, but imagine if that was fun.
yeah,
That's what we get up to.
I've also explained the podcast to some coworkers, and they're a little more like, I don't know how much tabletop your coworker had, Chad, but like the two people I was explaining it to, well, there's three people total, but like two of them are pretty familiar with tabletop, but they're more in the fantasy setting for the most part. So telling them that I played a modern day like CIA agent kind of thing and explained all the stuff that was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of like eldritch lore and things like that involved with it, and They're like, oh, that's
I mean,
interesting.
who could forget the time Foxtrot put that 9mm up to that dragon's head and put 3 into its skull? We all finally remember that moment.
I remember talking to my friends about the podcast as it was coming out, and like towards the end of Mullen, or the beginning, I guess, towards the end of Hawthorne's Crusade, when they learned like the way I had written Florence's backstory about like technically being a mass murderer. They were all very I mean, it's kind of hard to explain, you know, like I wrote a story where I'm playing a mass murderer and it's fun.
And if to answer some of the questions we got about that one, bad things happen in the medical industry all the time. That's not. Yes, the song being the disease, that's the far-fetched part of that one.
Yeah, look, Florence is definitely under the mindset of like, you know, do what you gotta do for the greater good. And if that means kill a few thousand people to save the world, then why not?
Yes.
I don't remember that part of Florence's backstory.
I'm not sure if we're explicit about the kill a few thousand. I think it was the number was always left a little bit vague, but yes, there's definitely the implications of there is blood on Florence's hands, far more than you would expect from someone that works at the CDC. But also, it was delving into the whole idea of kind of triage and acceptable losses when you're trying to develop a treatment with people that are like, if you have no chance of surviving, there's moral questions that come up, but also like, if you could maybe cure this disease and a few dozen or more than a few dozen people have to be the kind of unknowing guinea pigs, what's the morality in that circumstance? And the answer is that there is no morality in that circumstance. You do what you do, and history gets to judge you, as history gets to judge Florence. Like, it's one of those ones where part of the fun of Florence is that, like, she's not trying to atone for anything because it was the right thing to do at the time. Maybe.
Yeah, I think, like, really diving into it, what she did was, so she was a virologist, like, super epidemiologist, really everything microbiology, and I think that the disease was, like, I can't remember what it's called, but it's one of the self-replicating, like, unnatural things that could potentially be world-ending. So I think what she did was it was like an unnatural disease that was like latching on to a normal one. So she genetically, like, she modified the disease to be more deadly to kill itself off before it could spread. So, and then started injecting people, and it had some problems, but you know.
Yeah. No, this is all backstory stuff. There's just no organic way to bring up in a game except to kind of have it show up as, Florence has this cure because some black site medicine was practiced at one point, and by the way, this is what black site medicine is. It's bad. Like, it is some dark world shit at that point, but yeah. No, and I guess it's one of those things where kind of like it's always fun when the character provides a backstory that like you can do something with, where it's like, on one hand, like, the whole cure thing, the whole disease thing could be a thing that kind of just gets left in the backstory, but also we have a character that's busy researching Delta Green. He's busy kind of pulling up all their dark history. It would totally make sense. He would at some point be like, wait. What's this disease that Florence cured at one point? That seems super useful. I got these stupid bugs in this warehouse. Are you saying I can turn this coding language I have into light and sound? That's a way easier delivery method than mailing people bugs. And answer that question, why were all the dead bugs? It was because eventually our dear friend in the basement figured out that the bugs weren't the most effective way of doing the networking thing. They were slow, squishy, hive mind organic, when you could just get the code into someone's brain. Yeah, I guess I kind of get into kind of one of the ideas that some people have asked a couple times about. How do I explain this one? Our friend in the basement lacks imagination. He's very much the kind of stereotypical NSA person where it's about data, it's what he can find. It's like, he doesn't have the critical thinking to kind of actually do anything with it. Like, he's doing the thing he thinks he's doing with it, but also Yogg-Sothoth is just being like, spread my influence. Don't do it. I don't care how you do it.
Fair enough.
So speaking of Yog-Sothoth and like everything else, that how much of like a red herring was like Cairo importing that?
So, Cairo importing is indeed coming from Yog-Sothoth. So, and the name Cairo is the red herring, where it's like in the Cthulhu, Delta Green mythos, and the mythos in general. If you think Egypt, it's typically Nyarlathotep or Bast or Set, but typically it's Nyarlathotep. It's also one of those ones where kind of like, for those kind of keeping track of what gods we've worked through. Last season, our big bag at the end was Hastur. This season, we jumped up to Hastur's dad at Yog-Sothoth, and Nyarlathotep, great uncle to those two people I just mentioned, has been kind of hanging out in the background doing something ambiguously, not even evil, just ambiguous kind of thing. Like, there are only 2 characters that have shown up now in both seasons of Negative Modifier playing Delta Green stuff, and they are Nyarlathotep and Agent Tranche. Because Pine is unfortunately dead now, and it's not so much a red herring as it is if you were delving into kind of the mythos type of stuff and you were trying to find a legit-ish company name that would send you a bug or some type of organic material. This is actually kind of based off the idea of there's a certain types of pest control methods out there that are basically like release crickets into a field and the crickets will eat certain insects so they stop going after your plants. Basically, it was kind of idea of like, okay, like the idea of like how to Yog-Sothoth's first is like, oh, I have these bugs, you can send them out and they'll kind of make these colonies. The issue is the colonies are bad at what they do, they're a hive mind, they're still insects, they still have some kind of not individuality, but kind of like feral instinct. They are truly unnatural bugs. Like most bugs don't latch onto someone's nerve column and jack their body and zombify them and then slowly turn them into a big hive thing, unless they're honeybees, which are just known to do all that stuff all the time. But yeah, it was
golems.
No, they don't. But do they? It was kind of the idea of the bugs were there to kind of imply the first kind of hive consciousness, collective thinking, like in the most in the most blatant thing, like there are bugs in the system. Yeah, you have something. If you got kind of track of all of the stuff except for when our friend was actually actively trying to kill F-Cell, all the stuff did in some way kind of revolve around networking of some kind or kind of like collected information or kind of like shared, not experience, but kind of like some type of, I'm not sure the right phrase. It wasn't quite network, but kind of the whole ideas around it type of thing. Like it's one of those ones where Beast of the Century Club is a bit of a side topic, but it's kind of one of those ones where he's just running information. He's trying to use that to kill F-Cell at that point too. Like it's one of those ones where it's still a problem, but also it's not beyond the kind of scope of things. And hey, there's this monument thing in an investment company that's capable of maybe challenging this network. Maybe Delta Green should deal with that. Why is Delta Green ignoring this?
That's where Rocco comes from.
Yep. Oh, Rocco.
I love the introduction of that monolith and just how apparently it was supposed to be something that, like as you just said, it was supposed to be something that should have piqued curiosity, but the entire team just treated it as like this benign, like, well, okay, cool, that's just a rock.
Yeah, so and that was partially driven by the fact that within Delta Green, there's always this kind of instinct of if it's unnatural, you have to destroy it. And you have Delta Green, at least the programs have Delta Green being like, messing with the obelisk causes problems. Just ignore it, stay 20 feet away from it, and it really hates that one guy because it can't make him do what it wants. So we just leave him there. He's a bad investor, we keep keeping him going, but like it bugs the obelisk. And that's all the moves we got right now type of thing. Like it's one of these things like, what are you going to do? Blow it up in the top of a building? Like, how do you possibly cover that up? Like, do you move it? Okay, then you've exposed anyone who touches it or gets within 20 feet of it potentially to it. And then, like, to where, within the kind of jokey canon of the setting, that's why the national parks exist, is to keep people away from Lilligores, where it's like, if we just put a big park around them, they can't touch it easily.
Yeah, because
Lilligores?
Those are what the little obelisks are, and they're like one of the most powerful unnatural things.
That aren't like god tier things. Yeah,
you can't deal with them is their big problem, and they will deal with you if you try to. So
it's basically, it's like, okay, you have a consciousness that can manifest itself as a weird snake dinosaur thing, or it's just a thing that lives in a rock and like isn't evil, but it's definitely not evil. Like, it really hates humans, but not like in a, I think music, I just don't like you. Your species is terrible, but you're fun meat puppets, I guess.
So, what did you say they were called again?
Lilligores.
And they live in national parks.
Yeah, in the Delta Green setting, the joke is that national parks exist because at the center of them is where a Lilligore is, and the government was like, we can't deal with them, so we're just going to stop anyone from living near them by putting these parks around them that are kind of roughly their sphere of influence.
So how did one end up in, well, was it New York? Is that where we were?
How does one wind up anywhere?
Is it like the Illigor that was on Rumspringa that decided to travel into the city for like... How do you go from hiding in national parks to New York? I'm so confused.
I mean, it's probably similar to like how Florence got Rocco.
Yeah,
true.
He was probably hiking through, got influenced, and was like, next day puked up a rock and was like, well, guess I'm a parent now.
Well, and to your point, it's on the top of a tall building in New York because Delta Green's like, we have to get this away from people. Tall building, I guess? Like, it's on the top of a 100-story building. It's away from most people at that point. Like, maybe it's not powerful enough to hit the ground yet. Like, yeah, the Pizza Hut across the street, it's screwed, but most of Manhattan's fine.
I will say that whole story arc was great. Just because of the fact that it was tied in so nicely during the whole Wall Street Bets thing with GameStop.
I'd be lying if I didn't say there wasn't some inspiration pulled from that. Like,
you absolutely had inspiration.
Yeah. There's a rip from the headlines aspect of this campaign. It's like, okay, what's some details I can feed in for something ridiculous happening in reality? Like, it's also the best Delta Green stuff comes from things that, like, if I made up the story of Wall Street Bets, no one would think I was insane. They'd be like, no, that's not a thing. But then it played out, and I'm like, I now have license to make a rock that influences stock prices by people touching it, and it's doing market manipulation, and you can't do anything because it's like, how did you know to pick this? The Rock told me. Oh, you're just crazy. Cool.
A lot of these real life events were just happening so serendipitously with the campaign. It's time ever since the shutdowns and like the beginning of the pandemic, which we're still kind of in. Time is just compressed and like to me.
Yeah,
I'm just in a Final Fantasy VIII Disc 3 universe right now. Where I can't tell the difference between anything.
I hate that reference so much. It's so accurate. Yeah, it's one of those ones where kind of like it. I think like the running joke in Delta Green's community is that like there is no Delta Green. Are we sure about that? Like the latest thing that came up was there's someone advertising like a psychic. I think it's in Manhattan or something, and it's like, do you want to be a psychic? And then a green ass triangle on the bottom right hand corner of it, and the Delta Green community is looking at it like, don't apply to be that psychic. Like just don't. And I'm sure it's harmless, or it's like an ARG someone got a little carried away with or something. But also, like, it could just be someone that made a bad decision on design without doing any research whatsoever, didn't do the right type of research. And I have an entire community of people like me that are like, are we sure Delta Green isn't recruiting tools? It's not, it's just a game, etc., etc. But man, some weird coincidences keep happening. I think we mentioned it a while back in one of the live streams, but like, Uber Eats was doing fake cannibal food right towards either we were finishing up recording or posting episodes for Feast of the Century Club. Like, I remember sending it to people. I'm like, I got nothing.
Oh yeah, wasn't that the people who do the water? What's
Yeah, it
their
was
name?
Liquid Death. Yes,
Liquid
it was
Death
Liquid
did.
Death.
Yeah, the vegan
Cannibal
steakhouse
food.
cannibal. Yeah.
Yes. Life imitating art, imitating life.
Yeah. I swear, if can you imagine though if Delta Green was a recruiting tool, like you just have agents sitting through hours and hours of podcasts and be like, yeah, no, these guys would be able to believe that shit. Let's hit them up. Or these people, nah, they think too hard on this stuff. They wouldn't make good agents. Like, can you imagine the person has to sit through and listen to every single Delta Green podcast to see if they'd be a good agent?
Or the flip side of this, they recorded 54 episodes of this. They got nothing better going on right now. They are perfect.
Right?
Surprise, we're subjects of Project Stargate 2. Or 3, depending.
It's actually on 5. You're not supposed to know that yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, what else was kind of... Oh yeah, and speaking of the sign up to be a psychic, Agent Faustus absolutely would be the person to be like, powers? Yes. Let me go ahead and ascend to godhood.
Yeah, so let's, I guess, address some of the questions we got about that, kind of, like, now that we can pull back the shades some. We talked about some in the post-show as well as kind of rehash it some here. Let's talk about Father Faustus's road to wizardom, if you will. A road that I was so psyched to walk with you, because there's nothing more fun than having a Delta Green agent become the subject of a Delta Green operation.
I was so ready, because after Feast of the Century Club, after the ricin attack that nearly killed...
Not ricin, like horrible pesticide, legal pesticide bomb.
Didn't we use something similar to like mustard gas?
Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
yes. War crimes were committed.
After we hit the Ultra Raid Plus on that tiny little Vermont shack, there was like that sort of thing of just like, oh, you could just call upon these like ancient gods that'll listen to you. Well, I can't do shit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna become a wizard.
Well, and on play, I played into the whole kind of thing of like, you have the opposite of Delta Green basically being like, what if you just gave into it? Like, learn to use this stuff correctly. Like, you could be a magical wizard too. Look at how powerful you could be. Like, Feast of the Century is like arguably there to kind of be the appetizer of like, these people are literally living forever, and all it costs is a couple human lives once a year. Wouldn't it be cool to command that type of power? Like, it's part of the whole idea of like the cell, if you will, of Malin, where it's like you're priming people at that point for the idea of it's like, I think I put it great where it's like, you have a person of faith, you have a person kind of disposition to already believe in God, get presented with, oh no, your God is fucking fake as hell, but like, you want to talk to a real God? You can call one right now.
Mixed in with the fact that like the second or the immediate mission or immediate whatever operation, there we go. After that was Georgia, was Savannah. Like, would that have been the turning point for Faustus into wizarddom?
It could have been. Like I said, I think as part of when we were talking about this previously, I'll get into it more now. I did not expect us to wind up talking to Nyarlathotep as part of that. It was always on the table because that was when Nyarlathotep could possibly show up as kind of part of that chain of events. But in my mind, the way that Weirdwood was supposed to go down was like, okay, you have some awkward interaction with Jimmy, and you just follow him. He's not exactly good at this whole covert operation thing because in his mind, he's got this murder tree, and who's going to fuck with the guy with the murder tree? Like, he's literally killed, what was it, like 24, 25 people? Like, he is one of the most successful serial killers in the history of America at that point, and he's done it in a very short period of time, and it's working. He has no idea people are onto him. He's sitting there being like, haha, no one knows it's me, Jimmy, the photography guy. Yeah, he's not looking out. He's not looking over his shoulder. Like, he's maybe thinking that, like, all this serial killing's making him seem suddenly attractive. Like, he's a terrible person. So my thought was, all right, you follow Jimmy, he takes you to the tree eventually. Like, he's not smart enough to go, man, some weird people showed up today. Wonder if they're curious about all the people I've been murdering type of thing. And you guys went like, Jimmy's obviously the problem, which I'm like, okay, cool, we're going right to this, and Jimmy was indeed the problem. You dealt with the problem, but then you hadn't dealt with the bigger problem, which is like, okay, yeah, Jimmy is a tool. He is the thing that something terrible is twisting to make something terrible happen, and turns out the big, bad, terrible thing kind of playing Jimmy is one of the biggest things in the setting, where it's like, you killed my pawn. Hello, here's my entire back row of queens in this chess game I've been playing. I am Dire Lethrotep. It's been a pleasure to meet you here in Georgia. Have you tried the food? Did you know you're only 10 feet away from a grave right now? I'm an all-knowing deity, and I didn't know that till now, but now you know too. Please shoot me so I can shred your sanity.
I almost did.
You almost did? Yeah, that, by all measures, not the wrong decision in that moment.
Yeah.
Bad choice, ultimately, because nothing you can do to Dire Lethrotep that he can't, like, send back in the worst way possible.
Yeah, I remember I had my gun unholstered, aimed, and I almost took the shot, but for whatever reason, I was like, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess kind of the way I figured Faustus would wind up playing out, where it's like, he'd start getting more into the, like, okay, maybe we don't burn down the tree in Georgia. Maybe we do try and, like, take some of Jimmy's stuff and do some research. And, like, hey, if Jimmy, terrible, terrible Jimmy, can make contact with this god thing, maybe I can too. Like, that's what home scenes are for at that point. Incredibly bad decisions where, like, in the darkest way possible, like, dude's got access to a total congregation of people that, like, within the guise of religion of some kind, would probably be convincible into doing something real stupid.
So, okay, since you brought that up, I'm curious. Would there have been a scenario where Father Faustus could have been rolling with, like, a tree minion to, like, handle stuff for us as part of Delta Green?
Less likely, but also, like, would Foxtrot and Florence have let that tree still be there? Like, it becomes the question of, like, does the story suddenly become, okay, Faustus has now murdered Florence and Foxtrot because he made a deal with Dire Lethrotep, and now he has tree powers, and then it's me going, like, okay, it's time for new characters, because now T-Cell's rolling up to deal with a goddamn tree. They have to play Lumberjack now, like, and it's scorched earth.
I feel like this was the early beginnings of a Delta Green Pokemon team, because we had The Rock with Florence. We've got a murder tree with Father Faustus. I don't know what mine would have been, but I'm sure we could have found something.
Your dog.
Cows?
In your dog.
Could have been, is right.
No,
Cows
my
or
dog
dogs.
hated me at the end of this. So
You're a bad Pokemon trainer. What can I say?
yeah, the
You're
cows.
too focused on those IV ranks and not enough at, like, making it actually like you.
Yeah, this was the early startings of, like, some twisted Delta Green, like, Pokemon adventure.
Wait, okay, so question. Alex, was it you, or, like, was it you as a player, or was it Javier as a character that realized that green boxes were, like, stashes of, like, weird, suspicious materials?
I don't think that was me at all. Was it?
No, you didn't. We have you realizing in the episode of being like, wait, this is how green boxes are made? Like, when you go the detective to dump stuff off the green box. Yeah.
Yes.
I just asked us, was that you or was that Foxtrot?
That was me. That was me. I had no idea how green boxes worked. So
and the version of Delta Green is out there, like, putting together murder mystery boxes for agents to go into is such a bizarre concept.
Yeah, no, that Javier just kind of rolled with it. No, but me as a person, when that bing popped up in my head, I was like, holy shit, these are horrible places. Like, these are double-edged swords. Okay. But yes, absolutely had no idea.
Man holding 9 double-edged swords picks up 10th double-edged sword going, maybe the second edge is a bad idea.
Yeah, the cows was enough. Oh.
The cows is one of those ones where I'm like, there's no fucking way they're gonna mess with some cowbells in a green box. It's like an obvious red flag. Oh, he's messing with the cowbells. Okay.
I will say I love that I messed with the cowbells, but I had absolutely no issue ignoring the T in the first box that we had.
The tea was bait. The tea was bait. I wish someone had taken the bait, but also the tea was perhaps too obvious bait.
It was too perfect. It was just like, oh, there's a character who likes tea. We'll put some tea in the box. I was like, ah.
And I think I mentioned this, but we'll go back over it now. So the tea makes you hallucinate, and every kind of home scene that you take the tea, it adds up to eventually you going and hanging out with Yog-Sothoth at the end of reality, and him being like, sup? Your sanity's shattered now, by the way.
Well, I'm having tea with an old god.
But it's the old god of information, correct? I mean,
yeah, so it's Yog-Sothoth, yeah. If you're gonna learn way too much, you might as well learn from the source, yeah.
Faustus being trapped in the clutches of Yog-Sothoth would have been such a beautiful, just like,
Yep.
Icarus flying too high, close to the sun.
Back to one of the central themes of the campaign, yeah. Like you have a character that basically pulled the Faustus of, but what if we just did what the giant squid monster in space is telling us to do? Like, it's doing so much good and doesn't realize they slowly have become a brain in a server rack in an abandoned basement.
So, I need to circle back on this because the possible consequences of this actually have me feeling a little bit like interesting right now about it. So you're saying that if I had drank the tea, or if I had made the tea, at the end of the campaign, I would have ended up having tea with, was it Yog-Sothoth, or what do you...
No, every time your character went to sleep, hypothetically, your mind would drift. And you'd have picked up an addiction to the tea. So every time you're at a home scene, basically it's going to be like, you have to drink more of this tea. And then it's after enough kind of mind drifting, like it's one of these things where it's like, hallucinogenic tea exists, people describe it as a mind-altering experience. This is tea that literally makes your mind drift out of your body and kind of into the cosmic beyond reality and slowly closer and closer to Yog-Sothoth, where eventually Yog-Sothoth takes notice of you and goes, hello. And in that moment, your mind would break because it's Yog-Sothoth saying hello to you at that point.
Okay, no, I was just catching...
Which would have potentially turned you into a cable monster, just saying.
Okay, because I was just curious because you had said that I would have ended up... Because you said I would have ended up having tea at the end of time with Yog-Sothoth. So I keep saying his name wrong. Yeah.
The tea makes you drift. Like, this is not one of Nyarlathotep's tea parties. Yog-Sothoth is too nebulous to know what tea is, let alone not know what tea is simultaneously. Like, he gets the concept. He's never actually had it, though, because that would require a functioning mouth, if that makes any sense.
Okay. The only reason... Because in my mind, it would have... So the way I was picturing it, because you said, I'd end up at the end of time having the tea.
Outside of time. Yog-Sothoth exists outside of time.
Okay. Because I was like, at the end of time. So theoretically, if I had had the tea and then eventually broke, it would have been an interesting scene to play out because potentially I'd run back into Florence at the end of time. It would be like a bizarre
snow globe effect of you watching reality end and being stuck outside of the kind of, I'm going to call it the snow globe that is reality kind of thing, as Azathoth slowly burrows his way through the glass into reality and you're kind of outside of it, and Yog-Sothoth drapes a tentacle over your shoulder and goes, see what you got away with? Isn't this great? You'd hear it in like the fat sound of like a billion goats screaming and you'd just be like crazy at that point. But yes, basically kind of anyone that got thrown outside of reality for a couple other things that popped up that could have done that, like you'd have shown back up at the end where it's like, we're watching the world end, cool, and we can't do anything because A, we can't do anything, but also B, we're just kind of...
I thought it would have been interesting, though, because it sounds like that would have been an interesting premise where Florence and Foxtrot would have met again at the end of time. And it's like that reunion of like, because first of all, Foxtrot was shattered when Florence died. I mean, well, obviously, if you're watching this stream, spoilers, obviously. But yeah, died. But
you had a year to keep up with the podcast. Yeah. I'm not apologizing.
Yeah. But it would have been interesting, like, that little like butterfly effect of having the tea would have somehow end up putting me in a situation where at the end I would have reunited with Florence and I could have had like a hey, I'm sorry moment kind of thing, and that would have been really like, that's like, okay, I'm feeling all like
I'm also thinking like, but that's also presupposing that you would have survived the entire experience up until that moment.
Yeah,
it was you who were the one who disappeared first.
But yeah, now this
it's a fun little like, oh man.
I like pieced together a whole scenario when you said that line. I was like, oh my god, what if this happened and this happened? Because it's just the way the stories are put together is like every little thing has a, you know, it's like Delta Green's campaigns are like the butterfly effect in full rev.
Yes, they again, you have a lot to thank from Impossible Landscapes, which explains a couple things that, like, I have as a GM, kind of as a general kind of dungeon master, what are the right phrases, I have a problem where basically it's like, until a canonical thing from the creators says, yo, you can totally do this, I'm always like, can I do this? I know it's like, yes, it's your game, you can do whatever the hell you want, but I'm like, no, I'm playing with someone's toys, like, is it okay if I do this thing? And Impossible Landscapes basically came out and said, you know those 9 things you feel bad about, like, can I do these things? Yeah, we're doing all of them in this campaign. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I can do those things then. Like, I can... Yeah, it was Impossible Landscapes is it's a great campaign. Everyone should read it to a certain extent. We may run it at some point down the line, but yeah, for me as a person, it was very important. It was very nice to see what Arc Dream thinks a Delta Green campaign is, and kind of having that in my brain and giving me permission to do, like, here's some stuff you can just do. Yeah, we do it. We're doing it. You can do it too. And I'm like, thank you for saying I can do this. Like, yes, I could have all along, but at the same time, it's me being like, no, it's your toys. I don't want to, like, make it too weird in the Delta Green setting, and them being like, no, make it weirder. And I'm like, yes.
As a handler, was there anything that you kind of wish that we as players were able to pick up more or like lean more into?
You guys picked up at the end, so we're actually going to dive. The answer to this question is also the answer to a question we got a couple times after kind of the campaign was winding down, and it was, when was FCell actually under surveillance? And it kind of plays back into that, because you guys kind of passively picked up there's a weird surveillance thing going on, but there were specific points in the campaign where you actually were being surveilled. And basically it's like, it's different types of surveillance. Like, so NIMBY, it's, hey, new Delta Green squad, see how they deal with my bugs. Feast of the Century Club is, there are people actively researching you. Our buddy in the basement has sent some people to research you, whether they are cable people or just PIs he hired is not all that important in kind of this post-show, because we never dealt with them beyond that, but like, it's the first hint of like something or someone is actually actively invested in you, and there's the hint there of not only are they curious about you, they know enough to like find you. They found you in New York, a city of millions of people, enough to like have your hotel room surveilled and have a admittedly bad at their jobs circuit of people trying to two people trying to find you type of thing. And based on whatever they found, it was decided off the information they provided. That sets up not in the Weirdwood, Conflux, where you go off into the not Conflux. Cabin in the Woods is what I kept calling it in my head. So it sets off Vermont, where it's kind of, okay, these people are a problem, they need to die kind of thing. Like, they're not, they didn't bite the apple. They were like, no, we have to kill Century. We have to kill the Century Club. Why? They're wizards. Like, they're towing the company line of wizards need to die. So let's send them into this thing that's done a very good job of killing people. Like, I guess like the stuff you could have dug into more on the cabin stuff was just the number of people that have gone missing in pairs where one person had come back. Like, there were more hints at the mechanic of how that thing kind of worked once you were there, that it played out the way it played out. And this is kind of a weird one for me to answer, because I like how the story played out. Like, it's one of those things where that's the campaign as far as I'm concerned. There's just some stuff around it. Like, there was more lore about what that thing was, but also, like, that one's weird because I kept going back. That's my first big hint at, like, hey, here's maybe what the actual big bad of the setting is, and it's the drone swarms. It's thousands of eyes amorphously kind of looking around without any real purpose, and that's a vague technological hint, and it's Yog-Sothoth, and that's when some blurring starts happening, where it's like, is it Yog-Sothoth, or is it our NSA friend in the basement? Who really knows? It's technology, but it's also just a ton of eyes, and it's people being, like, encouraged to go somewhere to provide those eyes, and it starts ramping up from there, where once you, like, thinks you're dead, time skip happens, Weirdwood happens, where you actually are safe. Like, there's no surveillance going. Jimmy's just kind of on this guy's radar. It's like, hey, this guy's doing wizard stuff. Better keep an eye on him. Might be useful. He's got something going on. what the hell's F-Cell doing there? They killed my new wizard friend. You're alive? Okay, let's make this more personal. Send out the box. And the box was already out because it's kind of the hint of like, okay, it's addressed to F-Cell. If F-Cell's dead, there'll be extra Delta Greenie, but if F-Cell somehow survives, there'll be also extra Delta Greenie, but it kind of win-win, and that's when the surveillance kicks back in. If it's like, okay, yeah, he's hacking security systems, he's got his eyes on, he was infecting stuff, he is actively helping two incredibly incompetent murderers cover their tracks, because it's not the mask messing with the cameras, it's Malin. Like, it's Malin doing hacking and weird bullshit to help them out to try and, like, make this beyond it. Oh, it's obviously them. Why? We have them on cameras. They are incredibly terrible at this because they are id monsters that are compelled to murder in public and increasingly complicated, escalating ways type of thing. Like, they are bad at the not getting caught part, so Malin is kind of like, be safe, my berserkers. Lure the Delta Green to you, and obviously from there it's an all-out sprint of like, yeah, it's growing interest in you and growing focus. That kind of, it also parallels the I think Dylan actually said it best, where basically it's the idea of like obsession. Like, it's gone from like, I hate Delta Green to I fucking hate F-Cell. You're messing. You're the reason my plans are working. If I kill you guys, then all of Delta Green will come around, and that's not how it's going to work, obviously. But it's kind of, it's the human tunnel version versus the Eldritch kind of effect on him, where it's like he thinks Yog-Sothoth cares, and part of why Yog-Sothoth is my favorite Eldritch creature, it's not clear Yog-Sothoth knows he even exists.
Huh.
Like, he's just a thing that opened a hole he managed to get a tentacle through and grabbed onto. Like, the coolest thing about Yog-Sothoth in the kind of Eldritch canon is that he's the opposite of Nyarlathotep, who's my other kind of favorite of the Eldritch things, where Nyarlathotep, most human, gets humans, can pass as human any day of the week. Yog-Sothoth is like, I keep getting these cultists. What do I do with them? Give them knowledge, I guess? Like, you want how to build a Death Star? No, we wanted to cure this famine. What's a famine? That's when people die, right? Yeah, here are guns. No, starvation. What's starvation? Here's meat. Is this made from people? What's a person? Like, it's he's the Eldritch deity of way too much information, no kind of context for it. Like, he literally is just thoughts ultimately floating around at the end of time, or outside of time, being like, I know everything, but have no human concept of context, so I don't know how to use it effectively, if that makes any sense. Where it's like, it's almost like a feral kind of intellect thing. He's obviously smart. I'm giving him the kind of intellect. I'm not being fair to him, like, but it's kind of this whole idea of like, he doesn't want cultists. He has no need for cultists. He has no plans to further. It's like, I guess I have cultists now. If you want a computer code language that turns people into cable monsters? You do? Okay, here!
So, and then just kind of like zooming back to one of these moments with Agent Florence being communicated to with those flashing lights, was that a direct connection, or like Yog-Sothoth directly trying to communicate with Florence? Or was that just like general, like, otherworldly Eldritch knowledge? Just kind of
I'll fully admit that I don't fully know where, in the context of cables, Yog-Sothoth begins and our NSA friend ends, type of thing. And that's kind of deliberately on my part, right? I didn't want to have hard line. When Florence got kind of logged into the system, for lack of it, when she was spitting code, quite literally, that was a direct line to Yog-Sothoth. Basically, like, I figured that's kind of your dial home moment by accident of, you're seeing the code. You're seeing the code in a way that, like, she's now, and it's kind of again like the moving plates of weird kind of things that had to line up, where like, it was the, okay, you have this moment here. Depending what people's unnatural scores are on who's doing it, how open are you to this Eldritch thing saying, hey, you want to have a chat? And it not then, when you kind of show up for the chat, it going, I don't know what English is because mouth movements don't work in my reality. Blinking lights? Yeah, it's again, it doesnet understand people well enough to communicate directly with people, and like, so I guess to kind of explain kind of the Malin, the Freenet Collective thing. It communicates with Freenet Collective because they're making a code. It can kind of like say, oh, hey, here's this complex coding language you can understand. I understand complex code. Have you thought about doing this? And kind of the code evolves, so it can now interface with people, and they can kind of get people that way, but also it doesn't get people more. It's the code at that point type of thing. Like, and yeah, the code is Yogg-Sothoth whispering, yo, I got this code for you. It's pretty slick. But at that point, the code is kind of almost its own separate thing that still ties back to him and is kind of important that he's kind of there in the servers in a hole in the ground that, like, breaches reality, but it's also kind of like, that's not even all of that. It's like just a small segment of him coiled up into the Orbita building that, like, got there because someone made a bad choice a while ago and sacrificed a bunch of people and got his attention, and he's like, oh, you want to talk to me? Oh, what do you want? Oh, you're all dead. Door's still open, I guess.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's Eldritch beings shouldn't really be capable of directly contacting people, especially the god stuff. Like, they're so beyond human, except for Nyarlathotep at that point, where it's like, increasingly I grow kind of bored of this metaphor, but like, if you saw a bunch of spiders sacrificing a squirrel dancing around the middle of your apartment floor or something, and they like were somehow like vaguely communicating they wanted waffles or something, out of curiosity, you're probably gonna give them a waffle just to see what those spiders do next.
This is accurate.
Yeah, like that's kind of how Eldritch beings view humans to a certain extent. It's like, I could crush all of you with zero effort. Like, there's nothing that would be easier for me in some ways. But you went through the effort of getting my attention, and you want a waffle. Is a pancake acceptable? Here. Yeah, I'm simplifying it, so I'm making it funny for this, but that's kind of a very common way of people describing, like, why do Eldritch gods even talk to humans? And it's like, you'd be curious too.
All right.
Yeah. Like, all of us have at one point saw an ant going across the floor and been like, what if I gave that ant a sugar cube and then took the sugar cube away as, like, a bunch of ants come back, and, like, that ant's now the liar that told all his ant friends, yo, there's a sugar cube there, and they all go away, and he gets let you put the sugar cube back and just messing with that ant. Like, it's a weird thing to think about, but that's a very human version of what an Eldritch being could be at that point. Yeah.
God damn, okay.
Yeah.
Like, my relationship with this game is interesting just because I'm coming in with a very vague and dated knowledge of Cthulhu mythos. So I am familiar with it in the sense of just like the big players and stuff like that, like I can recognize. But going into like the lore further of like the deep ones or Yogg-Sothoth even, I had to brush up and just kind of get into the mindset of like horror and other things like that, like kind of mid-game even with what was that book that I had recommended you? Something Red Hook.
The Red Hook Murderers or something, yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't quite the name, but yeah.
It was a really phenomenal retelling of one of H.P. Lovecraft's stories by Victor Lavelle.
Sounds right, yeah.
Yes. Which was like, all right, cool. Like, I kind of got like a good vibe, and I can kind of equip myself as a character to kind of come back to interact better.
No, and I think kind of what makes Delta Green is the fact that it's not really about the big things. It's about kind of what their modern influence equivalency would be. Like, it's one of those ones where in Call of Cthulhu, it's very much like, oh, we're stopping Cthulhu from rising from the ocean. It's like in the modern day, it's like, no, the deep ones are done. Like, they've done their stuff. They're just out there living at the bottom of the ocean, waiting for the tides to rise. Like, they're like, hell yeah, this global warming thing's great for us. The oceans are getting bigger. Like, they're gonna stop polluting us one way or the other type of thing. Like, we're good. Game's done as far as we're concerned. And Delta Green's out there being like, we have to stop the deep ones. Why, actually? Because we have to.
They're deep ones.
Yeah.
Stop them.
Yeah. With all the xenophobic implications that comes with it type of thing. Like, there's... Like, they're fish people. Why wouldn't you want to kill fish people? They're not really doing anything right now. They're just out there living under Hawaii or something.
So I'm curious, like, all of us, what were your guys' like favorite moment of the whole season, and like, what's your overall thoughts at the end? Like, how did it make you feel, the whole campaign, now that we've seen it all?
As wild as a moment it was, one of my favorite moments of the season was the abduction at the park.
Oh, yeah.
Just because it was kind of there where I was a little nervous reintroducing a old but new character, but it really was one of those moments where like it solidified our relationships with each other as players, and how like also just kind of the wild and unknowing aspect of this game, because I came out from like a major tragedy, and this one was like I felt like I literally escaped with just the skin of my teeth. Like in like everything after that just kind of calmed down, and there was like this rush of just like ease, but also still kind of like, oh, what the fuck do we do from, you know? Because your teamwork with with Foxtrot, it's so hard trying to say Foxtrot because I never referred to you as that.
Yeah.
But Florence's teamwork with Foxtrot was just so like on point. Like you two have got it kind of going, and it was kind of like finding my place as well as Firestarter being like, I'm just this weird tertiary dude trying to fit in, but at the same time, I will do my own thing just because I'm used to a certain way.
Yeah. I think kind of the important thing, we got a couple questions of like, why is this season more murdery? And my reaction to that is, it's two people more murdery, and one of those people is definitely kind of an asterisk. Like, I don't have an answer whether or not Vicky needed to die. That's not one of those answers I came up with for myself type of thing. And I think it's important to keep in mind where, like, she did release a plague of bugs that turned people into zombies into Chicago. That's a pretty bad thing. Whether I think what was done to her was the right thing or not my place to say. But everyone that's sitting there going like, oh, she didn't have to die, she did a real bad thing. Like, she did a thing that could be an entire Delta Green campaign all by itself, hypothetically. And again, the kind of the bringing it back to what we were just talking about, the whole idea of like, oh, Foxtrot shot that person. We'll get into it more season, but T-Cell's a rough place. You got a taste of what Tranche is like as a handler towards the end of this season, and is anyone on the cast surprised that Tranche would totally say to someone, if there's a problem, just shoot it?
Yeah, one thing I guess maybe a lot of people don't realize about Delta Green, at least the way that I see it, is like the more senior of an agent you become, the more jaded you become to like how valuable human life is. Like, Delta Green agents all think that they're saving the world, and what they're doing is stopping the apocalypse, right? So
ends justify the means, yeah.
If you have to kill some innocent person to make sure you save the 7 billion people on the planet, is that okay? And I mean, I don't agree with what you do, but you know, it's just the
I think kind of the interesting kind of like, I don't call it a morality test because I don't like those phrases, but like the ICE agent thing inside of Diametrics, like that is there because like it is me kind of research said, hey, this should be ICE, but B, it's kind of like, okay, you're fine with murdering a person, but ICE is the greatest evil, and it's just fun. It kind of snaps back to us as people playing these games. Like, we're not these characters at the end of the day. Like, we have other reactions to things, and I think in that case, like one of the takeaways for it was like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do this because people won't like us. Like, that's actually probably true. Yeah, like the majority of the people you talk to would have been a lot less helpful if you'd been like, badge.
Yeah, we were on a college campus.
Yeah. Again, I think I said this in one of the previous things we did this, but like, I've always wanted to do the idea of like, hey, you have these credentials and they are so goddamn powerful in this area you're in, but here's a bunch of reasons not to use them.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this needed to be said or anything else like that, especially with like, oh, hey, why is the season more murdery? At no point is any of our characters going to be reflective to like our own personal views and our own personal moralities outside of the ICE agent thing, which like, in my head I was like,
oh no, like it got cut for the podcast, but like the struggle conversation that like wasn't good podcast, that was us, that was everyone being like, do we just use the badges? Like, they would probably fix the situation. No, I don't. Like, the moral quandary of the badges that happened every, 10, 15 minutes in the first couple episodes that we, first, session 2 we did with them that when they were on the table, it was a thing that was always in the background being like, I'm here!
Yeah, and it was funny because I remember when that whole conversation first started, I had brought up hey, ice agents have some really interesting powers. Yeah. Just because I think I had mentioned it, but it was if you're within 100 miles of the border, on any border of the United States,
yeah,
you have
as close as non-sanity damaging superpowers go in Delta Green, those goddamn badges were one of the most powerful. To answer a question we got, actually, what is the most powerful item that was given to the agents this season? It was those badges. The amount of stuff you could have gotten away with was ridiculous, and that's also me saying that's real world. That's also ridiculous. It is terrifying. Yeah.
As an immigrant player, when you just handed us that little thing, it's as well as we have these credentials for you, you're an ICE agent. In my head, I was I have to separate myself from my I have to separate myself from my character, but is this a boundary that I'm willing to cross? Is to pretend to be an ICE agent. And I couldn't. I could not. Yeah. I physically could not just be oh yeah, ICE.
And in the smallest way, this also ties back into the here's some superpowers. All you have to do is sell your soul a little bit. Again, going back to the major theme of the season, which is come on, think about how much more power you'll have if you just betray humanity a little bit. Just give into this darkness a little bit type of thing.
Yeah, I think our conversations with that whole thing, were just, it was interesting because I literally stabbed the woman in the neck.
No, and that's why we're bringing this up. We've gotten so many questions about why was that the line? Two, one innocent person, one morally ambiguous person, dead. Not a lot of questions about it. And for the record, we definitely kind of felt that behind the scenes. Those were talked about. Those were not. I think we kind of played them out in the kind of way I said we did, which was they're not just cheap murders. This is not murder hobo. It's no, this was a rough decision in a bizarre time.
Yeah, it also would have been interesting too because technically, while we had all this power to exercise, we would have basically put a big flashlight and a big target on our backs anyway.
Yep.
Which was kind of the trade-off that would have been bad to begin with because part of our whole shtick is that we're low key, and I was already because I think that's right when my paranoia kicked in. Yeah, I think we played it out as best as we could for our character. Even separating our personal beliefs on it, I think our characters also were this is kind of a big red flag to put on us anyway.
Yeah,
and if we're trying to be low-key, yeah.
I will say that not using them is probably the right idea, not for a variety of morality reasons, but because, hey, you've introduced real credentials into a already complicated situation. What happens when someone runs those and actual ICE shows up?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, how many times did we actually use credentials throughout the whole season? Any credentials?
Weirdwood, but yeah, beyond that, not really.
We did use the ones when we went to the to that city to steal the map of the forest or something like that. Yeah. We did use them there, and that turned into some sort of zany, cartoony adventure of all of us trying to escape when the fire alarm got pulled. Or something.
You didn't use them really. You were hey, we're so and so different. The badge flashing could have been more on point in some ways.
True.
I do encourage that for next season. Again, I'm a huge fan of the badge flash of FBI covering up your name and your address so they don't know if you're actually even FBI. Just being we're FBI, close it real quick.
Yeah.
The reality is most small-time law offices are going to be oh, cool, you're here? We didn't call for you, but I guess we got your attention somehow. How can you help us in our impossible situation?
Yeah, the only other one we used, I think, early on was actually during the Feast of the Century Club when we were IRS agents, or at least
yeah.
That was the only other time we used credentials. Beyond that,
yeah.
I think when we try to use the credentials in that, we were we can just brute force our way through a lot of stuff ourselves instead of pretending. Let's just do that, and it always ended with murder anyway. So
the cover up is real.
Yeah,
so I just want kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit, shout out to our handler Charlie, who always will spend the time after a game session, especially if it's a little harrowing or a little fraught, to just make sure that he just checks up on his players. Like,
oh yeah,
king shit right there. Like, come on now.
yeah.
It's we run a. I like to think part of the appeal of the podcast is the fact that we kind of, raw is the wrong phrase, but we're willing to go there, and it's kind of a trusting relationship between all of us, where it's like I know where everyone's lines are to a certain extent, but also occasionally it's like there's occasional moments where I'm like, huh, didn't see that one coming. Like, let's make sure everyone's okay after this, because like that was dark even by our standards. Like, Jimmy's the one I always go back to, where like on one hand my brain goes like everything bad that happens to Jimmy deserves. Jimmy's the biggest piece of shit possible, and still the interrogation of Jimmy is one of those ones where I'm like, did not see that one coming. Let's make sure everyone's okay. Like, don't regret that happened in some ways, but like it's dark. It's really goddamn dark.
Yeah.
Like, it is a dark, horrible situation everyone played through fantastically.
Which was also interesting because, like, if you think about it, our characters, like, especially, like, myself and Firestarter, that was our first actual bonding session. Which you think, from, like, a dark roleplay perspective of what happened, that was, like, the first time Firestarter and Foxtrot were like, hey, yeah, you want to trade shifts? Yeah, no problem, I'm going outside. All it was missing was a Top Gun high five at the, like, playing volleyball at that point, because we were just in the zone. Like, we were just like, yeah, no, this is what we do, kind of thing. Like,
is there a phrase like Stockholm syndrome where you bond over torture, like the mutual torturing of a person? Like, that's it's dark saying that out loud.
Well, for our jobs,
Character wise, that's what what's it called? Foxtrot does, like, as like a shoot job. For Firestarter, it's like, all right, cool. This is what I receive praise in, and this is what I've found myself to excel in. And his shoot job is just what pays bills, apparently.
Yep. Yeah, but it was just like, oh yeah, two people who are really good at their craft just bonding over like their work. Like, that's what that became, which was like a weird, like it was a weird, like, emotional moment, but it was kind of like, oh yeah, it's their like bonding moment. So that's kind of interesting, but also this whole situation is horrific.
Yeah, it speaks to the kind of psychopathy that Delta Green agents eventually develop, where it's like, man, we interrogated that person good.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Oh, you should not feel good about that.
I will say too, also, it's really interesting, like, and it just happened naturally, like, because like Firestarter and myself, we were used to this kind of work, but we would always check in with Florence to be like, hey, like, are you sure you want to be here for this? Because like this changes people. Like, even like, this was before Firestarter when we had Faustus, but it was the moment, when I can't remember her name. What was her name that we killed in her basement? Vicky, yeah. Like, even in that moment, there were several times I was like, hey, look, if we do this, there's no going back. Like, do you want to be here for this? Like,
no, and I appreciate the people that were kind of like held us to task on that, and kind of like, I hope the answer, like, we play this out eventually, was satisfactory, and I do hope that like we made good on that promise. I think we did ultimately, but if we did not, please let us know, type of thing. Like, it's one of these things where I try very hard for situations like that not to just be like, cheap death. It's like, no, this is going to linger and become a thing. And like, again, I don't know if killing Vicky was the right choice, but definitely got our friend in the basement kind of a little bit more like, here's a thing I can remind you that you did that was at best morally gray.
I think it's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, it's fine.
I was going to say, I think it's interesting in the sense that, like, during Dungeons and Dragons games where people are playing, like, murder hobos or anything else like that, the amount of violence that's being expressed towards these non-human or any kind of other...
I mean, like, a lawful good party still kills a shocking number of, quote, monsters.
But because this is set against, like, the more relatable or more recognized reality of just like, oh, but this person was this. It's like, well, if you're kind of raising a village versus doing something morally suspect with a suburbanite, like, what exactly is the line that is blurred and what exactly is the line drawn on the hard edge?
My territory's started long enough, and you have definitely tracked a bandit camp back to its location and burned that shit to the ground because they were bandits, and someone was like, yo, I'll give you 10 gold to go deal with the bandit problem for us. Like, slightly different morality because fantasy setting and whatnot, but like, you just tracked a bunch of people back to their home. They're living out on the outskirts of society, and they're robbing. Maybe they're doing it because they like it, but also like, you don't wind up a robber just because you wake up one day and go, I'm gonna go thieving.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that I think after every session where we did something very like shocking, like, you know, murdering Vicky and then, you know, the poisoning of the entire Century Club, the torturing, like all that stuff, like I think we spent like a good hour after each session talking about it and like you know, expressing that we're like, yeah, God, we can't believe that happened, but making sure that everything was okay for everyone. So
yeah,
good.
We're big believers in safety rules and stuff like that, and I think they're a big part of tabletop RPGs in general. Like, the number of times we finish recording and just be like, recording stuff's off, we just go, what the fuck just happened? Like, how did that happen?
That could not ring more true at the end of this campaign. Because well, first of all, we were so entrenched into it, we recorded way after our normal hours.
The final recording runs from basically the final recording session was when FCell left what's his name's house after talking to him to the end of what happened. The actual audio file, I think, was like 5.5 hours long, technically. It got edited down pretty severely, or just because that's how editing works. But yeah, it we got done like 1 or 2 a.m. I think for that thing.
Yep,
It was like 1 in the morning.
it was
absolutely fucked up from work.
We all wanted to die by the end. We're like, oh god,
You know-
man, I want to go to bed.
I did not fall asleep until a couple hours after that.
I sat on my couch till 4 a.m. and drank. Like, I'm like, I need to process what just happened. Like, I'm not gonna say I wasn't okay after that, but like, it was the weight of Hawthorne's gets to leave my brain, but also it was like, I need some time to think about everything that's happened in the last like 6 months or so of recording and process through it.
I sat up for a few hours just like going back over the campaign in my head because I was sad about what happened to Florence, but like I think that it was a very, very fitting end for her, and it was really good to come to terms with that at the end and thinking back over the whole campaign. It was great.
Yeah, I man, like when that campaign ended, so I had said it before, but like I was expecting my character to die, and in a situation where like when we found out it was behind some glass thing and I had to like climb into it, I assumed I was gonna die because I was like, look, I'll set the bomb off to make sure everything works. You guys get out of here. It was gonna be like a self-sacrifice moment. And then the opposite happens. I survive and someone else on the team dies. And it's like not what my character was expecting at all. Not what I was expecting. Because I was fully ready and I accepted the fact that my character was going to die. And then he didn't.
Well, so, and I guess kind of to give you a little inside baseball moment for you, there was a dice roll on my part that was a coin flip of whether or not your bomb worked.
Oh, shit.
When Faustus kind of bit it at the end of the cabin game, I, as a player, could not fathom why that was so emotionally important to you guys. Because in my head, I was just like, it's just Faustus. It's just whatever the heck. Like, it's only like three operations in. Like, what's the point? He's just a character. Let me just make my new character and just kind of roll it. Up until the moment where Florence just kind of gets sucked into the ground. And that's when it clicked for me. And that's when I found out how much of myself I had invested inside Firestarter and the relationships that I created with Foxtrot as well.
Yeah.
And like, I had to take a step back and just kind of reappraise just my own actions as a player, as well as just how sucked into the moment I was. Because then I was thinking to myself, like, oh, I real fucked up by telling people, it's like, oh, I'm a fireman. We gotta make sure that we don't get smoke inhalation. Like, did I even had I just been like, let's just run? Would that have even happened at all? Or absolutely just
it was
Florence's fate?
Yes and no is the answer to that. Like, it's one of those ones where if there'd been a couple more failed, not fumbled athletics checks, it would have been like, no, there's smoke inhalation going on. Like, the crawling was a good thing. It bought you guys a couple extra turns where I started slapping -20s and -40s on your athletics checks because, the room's full of horrible caustic electric smoke. Like it's one of these things where kind of like, it's like, okay, yeah, it was a chase sequence, basically how this thing ended, but like, if you look at what was happening, you guys were running up 2-3 stories of basement stairs essentially to escape from a fire of electrical, rubber, plastic, like caustic fumes were filling that place. Like it bought you a little bit more time. Like it's one of those ones where, does it slow you down? Yeah. Is it probably the right call because it buys you a couple more minutes of not choking on just toxic smoke? Also, yeah, like we were about 2 or 3 turns away from me being like, okay, I'm gonna start rolling d4s. What, you're taking that and like, hey, you're breathing in poison damage.
Cool. Basic fire training did actually help. All right. That
I
alleviated a lot of guilt.
I am a big believer in rewarding moments like that because I had a whole like thing for that thing. It's like, okay, things are on fire. That means, oh, they're doing basic fire stuff. Yeah, that tracks. That pushes the thing back a couple of minutes. Yeah, absolutely. Like the fact you guys had established kind of breaching procedures where it's like, okay, we have positions we go into. It's like, if you just kind of walk into the room, things can get you then. But no, you're doing that kind of actual tactical move at that point. Like, I think we talked about it I'm not sure it's part of anything, but like the fact you guys got big into the habit of like we back into things because pulling out is way easier than trying to back out of something in a hurry. It's me making notes like, yep, they backed in. Like that's no drive check required. Just pulling out's pretty easy. Like, yeah, I was prepared to be punishing on every single one of those times you guys parked without backing in, where it's like, okay, if things go bad, they didn't back in, so that means they have to pull out, and maybe let them roll a luck check to see if they can pull directly in front of them. But on a fumble, I'm gonna say they missed the cement thing that divides up the spaces or something. Yeah, like it's little details like that I appreciate, where it's like me being like, oh, cool, yeah, fire safety. That pushes back the smoke a couple turns. Perfect.
Yeah, that whole sequence was a really fun situation act out, but man, was it rough when it all came together, because we had been getting such good rolls, and I was like, there's no way Florence is gonna die, it's not gonna happen, and then the roll fucks up, and I literally in my mind visualized that moment where you reach out and the hand barely misses, and just like the cliche one you see in all the movies, but I felt that because I'm like, I'm nailing these checks, we're doing good, I got this, and the one time it fails in the most crucial moment, just literally fingers, and I was just like, oh,
good.
I checked my heart rate after that. It was elevated, straight up.
My watch tells me when I have so the watch only lights up when I have a relaxed reminder, because hey, your stress levels are higher than normal. It happens when I play WoW and I'm raiding, and it happens when I play this fucking game here. And it flared up a few times during that, and actually I remember, I can probably check the dates on it, but I remember it flaring up during our campaigns.
It's pure hyperbole. I love the idea you go into a doctor's office, they have a heart monitor on you or something. You're like, what were you doing on Thursday at 9:30 p.m.? I was playing Delta Green. They pulled a gun. They're like, what's that you just said?
Oh, God. I was thinking about that afterwards, and Florence going down there, she wouldn't have wanted it to be anyone other than her. She had already gone through losing Faustus, and while she tried to keep Foxtrot and Firestarter at arm's length, not actually forming bonds that she was willing to keep, she didn't want them to die because, well, they're younger agents.
Yeah.
Not actually, but also, I think she saw her relationship with them as sort of almost a little bit mentory to try to get them ready for Delta Green, and by the end of the campaign they were, so. And I mean, now she is off with her rock son, that's great.
I also love how parasitic the relationships ended up becoming in a weird way.
Absolutely. The Delta Green bonds became normacy. It was normal.
Yeah, that's the spiral that makes the game work, yeah.
Yeah, at least for my character, because I know you guys had way more bonds than I did overall. I think I only had my dog, for the most part, that was an external bond, not a Delta Green bond. And the neighbor briefly, but that was because it was a plant anyway, so.
Yeah, to answer the question we got about that, were Foxtrot's neighbor and Firestarter's new boyfriend cable creatures? Yes, they were cable creatures.
Yeah. But yeah, my foundation was my Delta Green bonds at that point. Because it was I don't really associate with anybody at work. So there was that. I don't have any other relationships. My character spends time alone for like leisure. But like the like foundation and that like comfortable place for my character was operating with like within the Delta Green confines far enough. So it was just
there's comfort and structure,
Yeah.
It's so weird to think that like the most true to Javier Foxtrot has been was while he was under the Foxtrot moniker. And so like I during the entire campaign, like I always thought it was just so interesting how we would get peeks into like Firestarter's life, peeks into Florence's life, but like Foxtrot is just literally him fumbling through social interaction.
Yeah. No, I think it's
trying to like keep a relationship with an animal that is supposed to just gravitate to you.
No, it's a topic we talked about kind of before when Alex was setting up his character, was the whole idea. It's like, okay, how CIA is this guy? Because like you have CIA that retires and then goes on talk shows, or you have real CIA that never retires, and like you find out after your uncle dies, it's like, oh, Uncle Mac was in the CIA? What? The guy lived out in the woods and never talked to anyone, had that closet full of guns. Right, that makes more sense now.
Yeah, no, it was definitely interesting because it almost is like that weird Batman situation where like Foxtrot, his real persona is him on the job, and him outside of it was a persona, like the mask, if you will. You know, because I can't think of another like comparison, but yeah, it's very much that situation.
There's a thing from I'm not sure which comic it's from, but it's Batman dealt with mind control, and the Flash is talking to him. And he's like, "How'd you know you were being mind controlled?" And Batman says, "I don't call myself Bruce when I think in my head. I think I call myself Batman." Yeah, I assumed it was kind of that relationship in some ways.
Yeah, it's very much that. So like whatever his moniker is for his job at that time, that's who he is. But everything out of that is just filler until his next assignment.
Yeah.
Which is why even like to try to like I'm sure I think actually Florence not Florence but Dylan caught it was after Florence had died and we were checking in, my first thing was like, what's the next assignment? Because I was looking to try to get back to a comfortable spot, because if I was not working and my character was just lingering with this headspace, it was way worse. So his Foxtrot's comfort zone was going back on assignment somewhere.
I think I love that we didn't coordinate this, because the way that I played Firestarter was that the Delta Green agent is his idealized self. And so for him to kind of just try to create this air and try to create like a sense of not dominance, but competency in Delta Green is like, all right, cool. Like he can take whatever his failed relationships with his family and whatever is like fear of the mundane and put it into something that like he can kind of live into or aspire to.
Yeah, who doesn't want to be a secret agent? Your life's a wreck, but this could give you purpose and make you important, and the world may never know, but you know you saved it.
And then Florence's weird relationships with her coworkers, and it being like, well, you're weird extensions of myself because my flex of power is being asserted or exerted through you. So
yes.
I like to imagine like Florence has people in her phone as workplace associate, and then like a level to them of how workplace associate they are, and like one is they say hi every once in a while, 5 is like, no, I know this person's name. They are, oh shit.
God, yeah, like it was real subtle at the beginning because she was really good at faking it, and kind of like towards the end she was shifting a little bit. Like the way she was going insane is realizing like her past life, the way she acted was bad. But Florence used to just see basically everyone as a means to an end, like all of her bonds and all of her coworkers, everything.
Yep.
That's why her bonds were just getting shredded anytime she was losing humanity.
Yeah.
She was like, I mean, this isn't my fault, obviously.
Oh, no. I'm always a big advocate of, like, you learn the most about a character in their bonds in some ways, like how they treat them, what their bonds are. Like, it's one of those ones where, like, okay, this person has a family, friends, whatever, and they're just throwing that bond armor out there constantly. Oh shit, they don't care about any of it, actually. Like, it is the relationship to bonds, and bonds is such a, it's one of my favorite mechanics in Delta Green, I think, because it's character development gamified. You see that so rarely in tabletop RPGs, where it's like, no, you're gonna deal with what your character just did, which was throwing your kid under the bus because you saw Shoggoth.
Yeah, it's really good. Like, I love the mechanic too, is like once you start running out of like regular bonds, and it happened to like Foxtrot, you have to build your foundation on other Delta Green agents who
It's
are
such a bad
always
foundation.
at risk of just being killed instantly. It was good.
Or run the risk of trying to make more friends and finding out that, like, because your character is who they are, they can't make friends at all. Like,
Yeah, like, I used to hit my rolls pretty well, but anytime there was a bond roll with, like, an external person, it was always like, yeah, you failed. It was bad. I'm like, oh, boy. Like, I mean, hell, the neighbor, I didn't even know her name. She was the neighbor in my character sheet.
So,
like I said, bonds tell you all you need to know about a character.
Yeah.
The peak moment that I felt betrayed by the game was when I fumbled Alcoholic Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous.
Oh.
And I was like, wait, hold up. This is supposed to restore and like help my character. What do you mean that I'm losing sanity? What do you mean that I'm losing willpower?
Oh.
I had forgotten about that, Jed, but I remember the like tangent you went on, and it was so good.
Perfect, yeah.
It was so well played out. Bravo.
And I just personally love the image of, like, everyone's had a bad day, they're there at this thing, and someone you don't know gets up there, and for their share, they're like, you want to talk about monsters.
Didn't I do that with my therapist as well at some point?
Maybe I don't remember that one quite as well. I think it was
Because I went to I did therapy, and I instead of like
therapy one,
instead of being
it was like
vague, I was just like, no, I just flat out said this is all that happened, and now like I don't know
there's
what's
a vector out there potentially.
Yeah,
maybe it's just crazy. Maybe this is real and it'll come back next season. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Yes. So we heard Jad's. Alex, what was your favorite moment and like final thoughts of the game?
Okay, my favorite moment, so I have a couple of interesting ones, but this one stood out to me, was the moment of shock when I got the kill shot on the exposing the core. That one was, because I mean, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I thought I was dead. Because it said, like, was it a kill, or what was the roll exactly? It was lethality?
It got cut out of the the lethality discussion got cut out of the final podcast.
Yeah, and it said, like, lethality. I'm like, what, am I dead? Like, what? I was
Did
so
my gun
confused.
explode?
Yeah. But yeah, that was, because we were in a bad situation, and, like, I think Charlie had even said, like, we might be making new characters after this night.
There are 2 points in the campaign that I'm like, okay, if I'm not going to TPK at this point, it's probably one of these 2 points or both of these points, and it was the cabin and the rave building, where I'm like, yeah, like, if just like a couple bad rolls go real bad, like, you all got real close to being like, and you're just in the pit now, and that means death. Like, congrats, you were dragged out of reality by cables. Like,
yeah,
time for new characters. And
that whole, like, part of it, like, even from the planning of the rave to be like, oh, let's just, for Foxtrot out of nowhere, is just like, let's just do a rave and we can literally blend in wearing whatever the hell we want and it doesn't matter. I remember we were deliberating this for a bit, and I forgot who it was like, no, actually, that's really smart, because, like,
no, that was me. Like, it's one of those things where I'm sitting there being like, I'm looking at my notes being like, this is a brilliant idea. I'm like, I didn't even think of this as a solution for this. I'm like, I had surveillance, I had, like, fake lights, rave. This is brilliant. It's everything terrible about it. It's like, what's the worst thing to have surveillance next to? A nightclub? No, an illegal rave. That would be so much worse.
I loved that little mini montage we did of everybody getting to, like, their outfit together. It was so good. And then the reactions afterwards, like, when everybody met back up, was so good.
Jad's outfit, the whole conversation of Jad's outfit being like tactical booty shorts and all that stuff. And then it's like, hey, look, you get a bonus of armor, but I have to subtract a little bit because you're kind of skimpy on the outfit, okay? So
Congrats, you've compromised the armor.
What's awful about that is that is actually something that I will wear to a CD Underground rave, and it's something that I based off of like, all right, cool. What have I seen at a CD
Underground rave? Yeah.
I'm just gonna use that.
And it was,
Google Images, CD Underground rave attire. Oh, okay.
it was so good because that moment, that conversation you guys had with that, like, well, this is what I'm wearing, and Charlie literally was like, okay, I accept the outfit, but I'm gonna have to subtract a little bit of stats because of what you're wearing.
I almost died from tactical booty shorts.
This was
I was joking at the time. I'm like, no, you get that. I'm like, I was kidding, but I'm glad that the fear was in you.
this was like,
No, I was subtracting HP as
I know.
it was so good. Like that whole sequence, like showing up in her gear, going into the building, having the whole thing like start to like fall apart, and like because I had a moment of like, oh shit, this is it, when I think I had thrown, or someone had thrown something into the pit of cables and literally did nothing. I think that was like a grenade or something I threw, and it just did absolutely dog shit. And then we got the cables on fire. I think Jad had set the cables on fire with a Molotov or something. And we were doing something, but like in the grand scheme of it, we were barely doing any damage to this thing. So I like legit was like, okay, character's gonna die today. This is it. Foxtrot is over. And then the crit moment. And I was like, oh, that was so good. And then the escape. Because I think at that point too, like I was hitting like just good rolls and I helped everybody get out too. Then I had my rage moment flare up where I threw a grenade in the pit of what was left of it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, that whole rave sequence was so good. I loved that. That's like probably one of my favorite moments. As far as just like my personal character moments. But like overall, one of my favorite moments was that ending moment of like when we were running and escaping and like the misroll with Florence and all that. Because if I had to choose an emotional moment, that's my favorite emotional moment for sure.
Oh yeah, no, like there is, when I was editing that thing, like there is a shift in everyone's like attitude. Like it's just like shit, things have changed. Like it's like it's immediate. It's like, oh shit, Charlie's killing characters still.
Yeah. And like, well, I mean, to be fair too, like I had pretty much the same response too when we had the house situation and Father Faustus like died. Like that was also like a weird, like we totally had a shift in emotions at that point too.
Yeah.
Because like I remember when it happened, like at some point Jad just stopped talking because his character was like gone, and we're just like, and it was just like, oh my god, like it feels so weird not having like Faustus chime in or say something at that point, because it was so like, it was bizarre and it didn't really click for me, because like I think that was my first actual like experienced player death beyond like, of course, the whole like in our campaign, and it was
the Wendigo situation falling apart.
Like it was it was very bizarre and somber, because like I know, was it Faustus is gone, but Jad was coming back with a new character, and it was like, okay, that's cool, but still, like there was a situation where we kind of like, all the Father Fumble memes aside, like it was a really sad moment, like too, and we also got pretty somber, and I think that was also one of the nights we like hung out after the session was over and just talked for a while with that, because Oh, go ahead.
I recall that really well. Like, because that's one of my favorite moments is like the Father Faustus's emotional moment there. Like the dice all lined up. It was very like good role playing storytelling, and like the slow realization. Like after Faustus had died, like we were trying to pull him out the door and we couldn't. So we collapsed the roof and we still can't pull them out the door, and we're trying something else, and then we just realize he can't leave the house and we're gonna die if we stay too. And that was really good.
I was losing my shit. Like I had turned my mic off because I was like, well, I'm dead. Like I can't really talk right now. And I can't like metagame or anything else like that. But at the same time, I think that would be a very weird thing if like my character's dead, but I'm still talking. It just didn't click in like my head. So I was like, well, whatever. But like as you guys were going, I was like, oh shit, like just losing my mind.
Yeah.
Losing my mind. And then Dylan, I guess the question goes back to you, like your like peak campaign moment. Like what was that experience for you? Like what was the highlight of like
So I've kind of got two, and Father Faustus's death is one of them. And then for the first time in a Delta Green ever that I've had, I hit a point where my character was losing sanity not because they were failing sanity rolls, but because their unnatural had gotten so high and their unnatural continued to get higher, so it was pushing their max sanity down. And then finally, when Florence broke, she got her disorder and it was depression. And there was like one whole session where afterwards Charlie was like, "Are you okay? I feel like we lost you." And I was like, "Oh, I was just playing up the depression."
I was genuinely concerned. Yeah.
that was a wild thing to kind of role play through and just kind of interact with your character of just like the super weird confusion of just like what the fuck is happening.
Can I just say, whenever we got conditions, we played them out so well. And it wasn't like, it never got to a point where it was like cheesy or like kind of like over exaggerating it. Like whenever we had some sort of weird condition or something happen to any of our characters, I feel like we played it off fairly well. Like it didn't feel over the top, and it just kind of meshed well with the characters' personalities.
Yeah,
like
something that was really well done is like Delta Green tackles disorders as episodes, so they're not something that is like overarching that happens all the time. So like your paranoia would flare up at perfect times.
But it times to be paranoid, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a consistent 24/7 thing, and I've been in Delta Green games where people just play their disorder the entire time, which can be really disruptive. So like choosing our battles and doing it like playing it as episodes that came out was really, really well done.
Yeah, I think my staple for that. Oh, let's go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, super sorry for all the listeners with emetophobia, and like my vomit retching noises. I didn't realize that was gonna be such a like thing.
I cut some of those out actually 'cause they didn't record all that well. Like it was, yeah. We have a warning at the start of the podcast. I not to sound insensitive to it, but we run the gambit of triggering topics potentially.
But it just, especially with like in flaring up or whatnot. Like, yeah, I personally can cope through, or I personally attempt to cope through things through humor, and sometimes that dark humor doesn't really like super translate well to other folks. Like
I think it worked for Foxtrot though. I think like so one not Foxtrot, Firestrike. I'm doing that all the fucking campaign too. One of the most interesting kind of messages I got was like people liked Firestarter, but also they fucking hated Firestarter. It's like he's just a gross guy, isn't he? And I'm like, yeah, it's a bit of that. Like there's all it's like it's a bit of a midlife kind of gross spiral going on too. And I think like that was like it was an interesting idea for a character. Like you were saying, like the whole idea of covering up like bad situations with like humor that like doesn't always land, where it's like I'm making myself feel better by making these jokes. Fuck all y'all sense of humors.
Go ahead. Oh, you go ahead.
There were so many points where like, especially when we got into the bunker, we had those scenes with Foxtrot where he was just doing stuff that like I was like, what is he doing? That's insane. Like when he went swimming in the like basement of that.
You said Foxtrot too. I'm not the only one that makes that mistake.
So it's okay. I'm gonna segue back to this, but it's really funny. Before we started this campaign, we all sat down and made characters, and we were talking about how like one of the silly in-universe things is that Delta Green like has people name themselves after a letter, and how weird would it be if Agent Foxtrot, Agent Florence, and Agent Firestarter walked up to you and said, "Hey, this is us." And I think at the beginning of the campaign, Foxtrot was like, "Why would we do that? That's like so obvious."
No, and it's definitely kind of a negative modifier choice if we go harder on them, because I'm like, no, they're their character names. Like, it's easier to keep people. Like, on one hand, the idea of having like a lexicon of all the fake IDs, that's cool. But as a GM, it's me sitting there being like, I don't want to keep track of all of these. Like, that would be a goddamn nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so cool to see Firestarter like mental state play out in these weird ways where he'd go swimming in a weird like sludge filled
Why would you go swimming in the murder basement? in the
Because
murder bunker
previous
basement.
person was a Navy SEAL, and how do I compete with a Navy SEAL?
I get it.
It was so
one
good.
of the disorders that you could pick up in Delta Green was obsession, and I was like, what if I just became obsessed with this idealized version of a previous agent that people will not shut up about? And that was me also just being like, why are people so attached to Faustus? I don't get it. And so I was like, what if I became obsessed with Faustus, or the concept or the idea of Faustus, the legacy of Faustus?
Yeah.
So I try to do things that seemed out of character, but like just execute good ideas terribly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to circle back on the code name thing, it was very almost like meta in a weird way, because not only did like Foxtrot hate the whole nickname thing, but the name he gave was also a disguised name, because I think it wasn't until maybe like after it was during one of the post game one of the post chapter episodes where I had said, my character Javier or whatever was that, and we're like, wait, hold on, your character's name is Javier? And
I thought it was John.
Yeah, and it was a very meta moment, but it was very fitting for, I think, for like the whole CIA John shtick to like, nicknames are dumb. I'm just gonna disarm you guys by saying nicknames are silly, and then give you
what
a
if
code
I
name.
have 2 nicknames?
What if you had 6? You keep naming yourself after baseball players and as like secondary code names, and I didn't even catch that until you were like, oh yeah, this is the thing that I do. I name myself after baseball players if I need to give a fake name to somebody.
So I had thought of that. Okay, so it turns out that thought is actually not an original thought, but using like I guess like baseball characters. I don't know why I picked baseball characters. I just figured like, oh yeah, I can just use baseball baseball characters, names of famous baseball players or whatever, and it would work fine. But it turns out they do that in the Jack Reacher movies. Tom Cruise goes to a gun store and he gives a fake name, and it's actually a shortstop for the Yankees. And the guy he talked to also knows about the Yankees. So he's like, yeah, it's kind of weird that the shortstop from the Yankees in the 1960s happens to show up or something like that and give a weird name. But like, I had never seen that movie prior to me doing that. And then I saw it and I was like, holy shit, I just ripped off the whole thing without even knowing.
It's a great it's a fun, silly covert ops idea.
Yeah. So I was just, I changed names a lot, but yeah, I think that was just kind of an interesting little subtext on all that. But yeah, no, like we all played our whole like disorder stuff really well, I think. Like the whole ice cream situation where you like are just so like where Jack just goes, oh, very nonchalant, just plays it off, no problem. And then the reveal that you're like eating some rotten stuff from the fridge or something, and we're all just like in shock, and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is just ice cream. What's going on? Like, it was just, that was a fun
Neapolitan.
way. Yeah, Neapolitan. Yeah, it was such a good moment. Like, that was great.
So we've got all of our favorite moments down. How about yours, Charlie?
I don't have a single favorite moment, I guess. Like, I was thinking about this because I knew it would come back to me eventually, and it's one of those ones where my favorite moments are like, there's a certain amount of manipulation and kind of scripting I can do to kind of nudge you guys in certain directions, but it's always when we kind of went like, me going like, I don't know where this is going, let's go on for the ride type of thing. Like, where is this madness going? Like, you can kind of predict some stuff that's about to happen, but like, anytime things went off the rails and the minecart was hurtling down the tracks type of thing, it was just me being like, I'm just as curious where this goes as all the rest of you are. I don't know how this one ends either. And I'm the one running this. This doesn't happen all that frequently. And that happened a bunch. And it was just kind of that feeling of me being like, okay, I know this has to wind up eventually, but like, what's 20 feet ahead? I do not know yet. Like, let's get into this. Like, yeah, let's play through. Yeah, it's definitely those type of moments. I think it's also one of those ones where I pull Dylan now, where I have 2 of them. Like, it's when the twists landed, if that makes sense. And I'm not talking like the big plot twist. I'm more talking like the subtle knife twist, where it's like, oh hey, here's a reminder about something you did, and like suddenly it was like, oh yeah, we did that. Shit. Like it based on kind of the overall theme of the campaign, kind of the big. Okay, I'm going to change that. The house, the reveal of not Florence's, of Francis's house, and just kind of the inside of it, and the fact that I was capable of keeping a straight face the entire thing, where just I'm layering things at you guys of like, hey, here's your driver's license. When you guys were like, wait, what? Go back to that. And I'm like, yeah. And then there's your high school yearbook. Like, it's just like, it's the fact that I managed to kind of keep that fugue state of just like knowledge dumping about yourself on you. Like, it's, yeah, and like it's as it's playing out, it's just kind of cool. It's the, you guys are suddenly aware of like, oh no, this isn't just a trap. It's a trap inside of a bear trap on a volcano with lasers pointed at us.
Yeah, that house was fun. I'm surprised that we all survived that house.
Me too.
Super lucky with some crits.
Yeah, and then that goes back to my kind of when things kind of go off the rails, where it's like, okay, here's the scenario, now act, and it's like, okay, what do you do? And to be sitting there going, they all survived, cool. Like, didn't see that one happening, but cool.
Near the tail end. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna kind of go off of that. Near the tail end of the game, I was actually talking to Charlie about like, well, I think Firestarter's about to die. So what character am I supposed to play afterward? And like, what was the list of like?
Yeah, we can get into that. So basically every single operation, and yes, for Century Club, it was Danny. It was only since my brain, I'm like, okay, there's probably going to be a character death per operation. Like the chances of me getting every one or half of the entire cell, I don't want to say are low, but like statistically speaking, I might get one or two people a session tops, and if it's one or two people a session, it's probably at the end. It's gotta be like one person during the run. So it was Eggs, the Detective Weathers, what's his name? The guy from that we all hated at the end. God, what was his name? I'm blanking on it now. What's that, Weathers? Yeah, that was Weathers, sorry. And the other detective that was in Weirdwood, those were all playable characters, and Danny was the one from
I thought the detective from Weirdwood exploded at the end.
At the end, yes.
Oh, okay.
If someone had died, you could have jumped into him, and actually for Nimby, the woman in charge of the homeless shelter would have been the one you slotted into if someone had died.
Oh, okay.
That would have been fun.
Yeah.
I remember one of the options was Florence's girlfriend, and I thought that would have been the funniest
thing. That was me sitting there basically being like, okay, if the entire team wipes midway through Malin, like, okay, what's the play? Like, it's one of these things where if one person dies, you can slot this person. It's like, okay, there's a new team, and this is kind of where, as the person you came up with Tranche as a player, it's me sitting there going, what would Tranche do in this situation? She'd do the horrible arithmetic and realize, hey, I've got these people that are going to be asking a lot of really annoying questions that some of them are kind of competent. Hey, you want to know what happened to your ex-girlfriend who was all mysterious? Go to this address and meet these people. Hey. We'll get more into Tranche next season, but Tranche is not a good person who's more than happy to kind of be like, oh, you want to know some answers? I'll give you some answers in the worst way possible. It's like, you want to know what happened to Florence? Here, go find out. Here's some people that might help you out.
So, I'm pretty sure you said it before, but is Tranche your original player character? Okay.
Tranche, aka Fiddlesticks, as she was called in J-Cell, was the character me and Dylan met through originally, and
yeah, it was
what happened to Tranche and kind of got cut short with that campaign ending is basically the inspiration for this 3 kind of campaign saga we're playing out as part of this, and it's one of those ones where kind of like, I think I mentioned this before, I have the recording of kind of the thing that sets all that up. It's audio is bad and editing it's not going to be a real problem. We'll put that up probably on the Patreon after all this campaign stuff is done, because it's massively spoiler kind of thing, but the idea of what happened is kind of what we're playing out now, the aftermath of it. And I think me and Dylan have joked about this a couple times in these kind of post streams. Like, Tranche is a bad person. I never played her as a good person. She is a fan of brutal arithmetic, is the kind of the thought process I always had for her, where it's like, what's the fewest amount of people I have to kill to get this done? Like, what's the kind of most acceptable thing I can do that kind of expedites this process, because to deal with the unnatural, you have to be it fast and brutal and kind of efficient type of thing. Like, it's some kind of a horrible Delta Green accounting in the background of her mind of how she goes about things.
Mm.
And we've been playing through some of that, I guess. And kind of, where was I going with that for a second there? Yeah, she's one of my favorite characters I ever came up with, and kind of became like, okay, let's do a fucking campaign that plays out this terrible situation that she sets up, and it is indeed quite bad. But we are going long, so we're going to kind of cut this freeform section and jump into the Q&A stuff. We've got a couple more questions that we've been getting throughout the campaign I want to burn through. If people are still watching this and they have some questions they want to post up, put it in chat.
Yep.
We will get to those after we get through this list. Question we got a bunch of times. Is this an outlaw or a program operation?
I believe we were a program operation at first, and then we became an outlaw one afterwards, right? Or we did one outlaw thing, and that was the Jimmy situation, right?
Yeah, we're not quite sure whether or not Balin was program or cowboy, but we'll get into that more next season. But yes, the majority of this season was program with some dipping into outlaw, and you can tell when it goes outlaw because the resources get real scarce, and the handlers are kind of like, figure it the fuck out. I don't care. Like, get the job done. Your agents, figure it out. Covered that thing. What's the actual worst thing that could have happened to an agent?
I mean, conceptually, I would say Florence experienced that. Good God.
I kind of think we actually had that happen with Father Faustus, because you had your, like, literally, like, your whole breakdown of, like, with the roles leading up to you, like, kind of lose. Was it, didn't you, like, believe? There was this whole point we talked about where, like, Father Faustus
drained himself to death, technically. Faustus,
yeah.
Faustus case, yeah.
I felt like that was kind of fucked in a, like, really horrible situation. I mean, it played out thematically beautiful in terms of, like, the whole situation, but, like, I feel like that character's descent into what happened to him was kind of the worst thing that could have happened of all the characters, to be honest.
Yeah.
My mechanical one was Cable Infestation.
Oh God, that almost yeah.
Well,
I was gonna say, like, Florence's ending is, like, weird and all messed up, but I think that, like, in Florence's mind, this is okay, because now she has, like, literally all of eternity to figure out how to try to fuck over Nyarlathotep, even if that's never gonna happen, but it's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I as a player did suffer, like, minor psychic damage as my rolls just kept hitting the way that they did.
Yep.
But, like, with the way that kind of characters had their thing, I was honestly so terrified of Florence succumbing to the Cable disease and then Firestarter succumbing to Cable disease.
Yeah.
Firestarter more because that whole warehouse situation was harrowing. Because, like, yes, there was the whole, like, oh, we're getting to this place and we're doing it in such a cool manner, that I really did have that, like, teenage concept in my head of just like, oh, I'm invincible. We're gonna be good. We're gonna get in, do it shit, and get out. Because like, Savannah was all right. Savannah turned out the way it did.
It would start off as a disorder called integration, where it was a slowly building disorder, where basically it starts off with, like, you basically becoming a social butterfly that wants to tell people that there's better ideas out there.
I mean, I didn't want to die in tactical booty shorts, was my big thing. Like,
I get that. Oh, I get that. Yeah. Next up, was the Employee of the Month board for Mr. Frosty previous Mr. Frosties? Yes. Yes, it was. Firestarter could have been an Employee of the Month if he just wanted it more.
I want enough.
Guys, the banter, not banter, but just, like, the whole, like, trying to sort out what the hell Mr. Frosty was is, like, did you post that blooper reel?
Yeah, that's in the cut content thing. Yes, the
cut content in Patreon is absolutely phenomenal because I could not stop laughing after the Mr. Frosty situation.
Well, yeah, the Mr. Frosty thing is, like, it's funny, but also, like, super horrifying to me.
Oh, yeah.
I think probably my favorite part about that is the fact that my wife and Jad both grew up in an area where that's the inspiration for the design of that thing is, what's it called, Mr. Freezies or something like that?
Tasty Freeze.
Yeah, Tasty Freeze, and they have these Stu actually. They just have these nightmarish murals on a bunch of their buildings that like are a goddamn ice cream cone serving itself to children. And I keep looking at them being like, who put that on a side of an ice cream shop? Like, maybe it's the East Coaster in me being like, this is inherently sinister. Like, what eldritch deity did this? Like,
Yeah,
it just stuck with me. And then we got Mr. Frosty.
It's kind of weird, kind of like a giant donut serving people donuts.
Or a
Fun
pig
fact.
that serves people ribs. Yes.
Mhm. Fun fact, that was the green box that made me realize, green boxes are repositories for Delta Green operations. Don't touch anything in green boxes anymore.
At the same time, touch everything in green boxes because hilarious things happen.
Yeah, because there's a gold mine of things that will absolutely destroy you. But then you can find that one treasure that's super useful, like that book to make Elder Shot.
That's right.
Like,
But also-
I broke my one rule immediately and took something out of a green box right after telling you guys not to take anything out of a green box.
Do as I say, not as I do. Yeah.
But all at the same time, it's like, all right, cool. Like, there's just all these beautiful toys in here, and some of them you're just like, oh yeah, don't fucking touch that. But why is there an entire series box set of America's favorite drama, Charmed, like hanging out in this storage locker?
Don't talk about that box. Yeah, I know. There's a great website called Green Box Generator that I occasionally kind of pull some stuff out of. Like, and it's got 3 tiers. It's got mundane, weird, and like or occult or something. And I don't typically touch the occult one that much, but the mundane and weird stuff people put into that thing is just amazing. Like the mundane one, I think the best one I'll occasionally just get bored, like cycle through it to see what it spits out at me occasionally. And I think my favorite one I ever saw was like the green box is just full of ping pong balls. It is floor to ceiling full of ping pong balls. Opening the green box causes the ping pong balls to spill out. There is nothing in the green box except ping pong balls. They are just ping pong balls. And I'm like, I love this so much because, like, even in the real, you do that. Like, I've seen that prank happen. People are like, what the shit? But, like, imagine you open a green box and just a ping pong balls. You're like, well, we're closing that door, never opening it again. Like, whatever's in there can stay in there forever. And like there's even a note saying like if the agents dig through the ping pong balls they find nothing but ping pong balls. If they close the door though and reopen it, the room is immediately full of the exact same number of ping balls again.
I like that the operation becomes needing to find every ping pong ball, otherwise it replicates and then they start like multiplying at an exorbitant number and just taking over the surface of the planet.
Oh my god, like that one YouTube video of the dude pouring a whole bunch of Orbeez down his sink and then like, just taking over the neighborhood's septic system.
Oh, I could totally see that. Although I have a feeling, like, I think our team would have tried to dig through the ping pong balls only to find out there's nothing there. But we would have tried to dig through it, I think.
Was it the Zero episode that one of the green boxes just had a cage that just shook and like there was a growling noise?
I think so, yeah.
That was the Zero episode. Okay. Like, because I remember that and I was like, was that the Wendigo or did we like run into that where there was like a living thing inside a green box?
I mean, you never looked in the actual cage. It was under a tarp.
That's true.
It made noises.
As Jaso will tell you, there's a crack in this wall and it makes sounds and there's a padlock across it. How is it making sounds?
Mm-mm. Not touching that.
Yep. Yeah. Covered most of these as we've been going through it, I think. Last one, I think this is actually my favorite of the kind of recurring questions we've gotten. Are there any real-world inspirations for the characters or the operations? You guys kind of channel anyone? I know in the case of like Foxtrot, it was kind of Sicario, the movie in general, was an inspiration for him a little bit.
Very specifically, yes, there were references to Sicario I used. Inadvertently, the Jack Reacher thing with the whole baseball code name thing. But the Sicario thing came out specifically because I'd never seen that movie before. And when Charlie was trying to brief me on Delta Green and what the game is like, he had said, go watch Sicario. If you're going to play a CIA agent, that's like the Delta Green perfect version of like a CIA agent whole thing. And I was like, okay, cool. And yeah, Josh Brolin's character in that was really good. But so was Benicio del Toro. And I kind of started channeling more Benicio than Josh Brolin at some point on that
Characters evolve, yeah.
Yeah, but my character did very much evolve because I was very asshole-ish at first. And I feel like when after time went on, there was definitely a bond like there of like work camaraderie. So yeah, beyond that, I didn't really have too much inspiration I pulled from anything else. It was very difficult not to channel myself into a character because like I'm very goofy by nature, like that's who I am, and Foxtrot was not a goofy character. So like the number of times I had to stop myself from making a pun as a character was very difficult.
Rough.
It was very hard because there were so many times and like I had to make the puns out of character because it wouldn't have worked for Foxtrot. And even then, the one time he does like a little cheesy line at the end of the campaign, it felt really out of place for his character.
Yeah, one of my few friends is dead. Guess I'll make a pun.
But yeah, there was yeah, not much else really other than bits of Sicario.
This with Faustus, I just love sprinkling in a little bit of religious trauma into some stuff here and there. I thought this would be a really fun game to kind of play around with that, especially
an appropriate game for it.
Yeah. Funny enough, Faustus is based off of another character, which was with the Neon Retro arcade Delta Green, where I had made a boxing priest character. And I was like, you know what, let's actually make like this one a serious sort of endeavor. So that was just kind of recycling, but at the same time, like really kind of exploring.
Just refining. The idea is kind of cool. Like the adding the idea of like, hey, this character, like, no, it's an ex-Navy SEAL. We use the Navy SEAL stat line, and they're trying to like fix themselves by, depending on how you think of it, kind of like trying to atone or trying to get like, this is my get out of jail free card. Like, I'm a priest now. I get to move away from all of that horribleness I did. And it's like, no, you don't, because Delta Green's like, yo, you're a priest now. Come work for us.
Also, my apologies to all the practicing Catholics out there and like Catholic historians. I'm not Catholic. My family was raised me Protestant, and I have since left the church. So I have like a loose idea of like what's supposed to happen. So my apologies if I know I got a lot of stuff wrong.
We will do more research for next season if you have another religious character like that.
Yeah. If I need to kind of dive through it, but I had a weird relationship with that kind of growing up. Anyway, with Firestarter, I just in my head just wanted to be a gross individual, I think, and I just had to like look around and think of like who's kind of gross, and I just thought of one of my exes. And he popped up, and I was like, tight.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Like, not based off of him whatsoever.
But that grossness quality, kind of that's human slime aspect. I get that, yeah.
Just kind of like face-wise, I guess, or just kind of like, let me just build it off of.
That's what I was just. I think I know what the characters look like. We never describe like facially what the characters look like all that much, but I suspect that if we all kind of describe what each one's characters look like, we'd get closer than not. Like, there's definitely a feel of these characters. Like, hairstyles might be wrong, but
each of my characters went through like this weird makeover. Because it was like, all right, let me infiltrate a thing. Let me not look like a priest anymore. Just like, hey, I just murdered somebody. Let me just change my look real quick so that way I'm unrecognizable.
Can I just say the idea of your character being a boxing priest absolutely reminded me of Father Mulcahy from MASH? Because I don't know if you ever watched that show, but the priest on that show, Mulcahy, was actually a boxer too. So when you said that, I was like, oh my god, if you name this character Mulcahy, I'm going to scream because it's so perfect. Oh, that's great. But yeah. Well, I mean, actually, I guess just to kind of chime in on the Catholic thing, I was raised Catholic. I'm not really practicing Catholic now, but I think for the most part, you were kind of spot on.
We got some names wrong for some stuff. Like we had some confusion what type of buildings were for some of those things. And
okay.
I'll flat out say that like we weren't wrong. We weren't correct, if that makes any sense. Like we weren't like calling like an abbey a nunhood or something like that. It was like we got like it's like that. The thing that priests live in is called like a cloister or something like that, or it's like the exact name. It's like it's not the priest house. We never called it the priest house, which I think us for not doing.
Well, I think to be fair, for like a general audience, if you had called it what it's actually called, most people would be like, "What?" And then we have to clarify it's the priest house, and it's like, oh.
And that's one of those things where I'm like, I can't quick Google this while we're talking. Like, I guess we're going with that name for it, but yeah.
And yeah, for me, I really thought about it while you guys were talking, but I can't really think of anything that I based Florence off of other than like the trope of like asshole intellectual, sort of. I don't really, and I might actually have like something in the back of my subconscious that I base the character off of. I just can't think of it.
No, yeah, it's a totally valid answer. From a kind of campaign operation standpoint, chunks of Feast were definitely inspired by kind of some of the weird financial stuff that's happened in the last few years, whether it be Wall Street bets or just kind of things that surrounded that. There was something I'm blanking on that was a big one for this question. I feel bad not knowing it off the top of my head now. Weirdwood was inspired by actually, so there is a island, not in Georgia, but not in Savannah, but kind of in the Georgia area that is full of some artists went out there and carved a bunch of like Game of Thrones style Weirdwood faces in a bunch of the trees. And when I was researching Savannah, Georgia, that kept popping up when I'm typing in like Savannah, Georgia, tree sculpture, see if that, and it's like, it's not in Savannah, but I'm like, okay, the idea of, hey, the woods are not just like spooky reaching over the road places, but like some dudes out there carving faces into them. It's like it led to, what if there's just a tree monster? Like, why am I overthinking this? Like, it's Savannah's known for its fountains, it being haunted, and its trees. Tree monster! Yeah.
I just imagine like an evil tree monster from Lord of the Rings being the monster that we had to deal with.
I think we showed a picture. I think I showed you guys a picture of that. And it is a sculpture I saw once. There's like someone making these crazy like humanoid alien looking sculpture things out of driftwood they keep finding. And that's what I was envisioning. But there's also one of the few monsters you guys dealt with you never actually ran into, which I always find interesting, kind of Delta Green moment of, we fixed it. What did we fix? We do not know.
I was thinking, like, in my head, it's like, all right, cool. What if the Ents from Lord of the Rings saw Fern Gully and was just pissed?
Yeah, that's
how I just...
Yep.
That is just perfect.
Also, just the Ents from the end of the Twin Towers, from what's it, then the end of the movie they show up, and yeah.
What, Return of the King, right? Is it Return of the... We're about to get
the second one, isn't it?
Okay, we're about to get blasted by the Lord of the Rings people right now. Because we're like, oh, is it from this one or this one?
It's the second movie. I'm not sure which book it shows up in. I know they get moved around some, but like when they show up and attack not Sauron, Solomon. Am I pronouncing that right? It's his stronghold thing.
There's Sauron and Saruman.
They show up, they come out of the woods, and they knock, and at least in the movie, they like wreck his tower thing with rocks and like push it over. And in the extended cut, I think there's an Ent asking Treebeard about like, may I throw this rock? And him being like, sure. And I don't know why the Ents stuck with me the way they did.
I wanted to kind of loop back to Florence. I was in love with your character throughout the entire thing. Not like infatuated, but just like weirdly obsessed with the concept of like there's this like baby genius that's also a kind of a psychopath. But like,
fun fact, all baby geniuses are psychopaths.
No, but like it was like, all right, cool, you're intriguing, Foxtrot's mysterious, that's intriguing. But the moment that I became obsessed with Florence was when I found out she's the toxic girlfriend. There's this woman who's just doing her best to just love her girlfriend, and then there's Florence who's just like, I got weird shit to do. I gotta go. And I'm just like, I know people like you. And I told their girlfriends to just, you need to leave, so I get to play with one.
Oh, that's so
That's
great.
I'm glad that she stuck with you. And I'm really happy that that's the reason.
If you know someone like Florence, run. Don't walk, run.
It's like, I'm about my job. I'm gonna girl boss my way through the end of the world.
Oh, girl bossing that. Oh my god, that's 10 out of 10.
I one regret not having Rocco say #girlboss. I didn't realize I had that regret now.
Oh.
Rocco's still in the timeline for now. You know?
Oh, indeed he is. It is. I'm not. Rocco is still in play.
We just try to contact Florence, and all we get from back from the Ouija board is
Have you seen my mother?
Boss? What does this mean?
I'm just
Two 40-year-olds.
Vibing in the afterlife, guys.
Watching
40-year-olds talking to a Ouija board that just told them girl boss.
Yeah, watching Firestarter and Foxtrot play out. What the fuck does girl boss mean? I'm just like, huh? Oh, that would be great.
Yeah. I'm not seeing any questions popping up in chat. That's kind of some of the reoccurring ones we've gotten that I've been choosing not choosing to not answer until now. Am I missing any, right, Alex? Oh, what you got?
Did you ever record what was in Florence's letter?
Oh yeah, they're in the episode.
Oh my god,
yeah.
I need to go back to listen to it.
Oh, yeah, fun fact. We recorded that without the Florence letters in there. So at this point, I guess Jad and Alex don't know what's in those letters.
Oh shit! Yes, that's right.
I might actually have the text drafts that I wrote that I could send to you guys if you'd like.
I know. You guys were here when I recorded my letters. I remember that.
Yeah.
So, but yes.
And they stayed in because you didn't die.
Yep.
Florence was
right.
the mysterious one.
I need to go back and find that episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back.
That's the last one. That's in the last 20 minutes of it or something. Yeah. All right, that does it for Q&A questions. I'll give people a couple seconds to send some stuff in, I guess, while we announce. So, the Pick a Location contest for next season has closed, and we have a winner. The name used for it was Doug Danger 57. Doug, if this is the first time you're hearing about this, we'll be in touch via more official means for this, via, Twitter or email or something to find out where we're going. To remind you, this means that Doug gets to pick a location that is U.S. territory, for lack of a better phrase. Not just continental U.S., but kind of a place that the U.S. might think of sending secret agents to in some weird way. But yeah, no, I'm curious where we get to go. Last time it was Weirdwood, which took us to Savannah, Georgia. But yeah,
It was lit.
Yeah.
congratulations, Doug.
Woody woo.
And, a small preview for next season, or not a preview, but a little thing you get to look forward to. I do a horrible accent the entire time.
Yeah, so speaking of what's coming next, so obviously we've been taking a small break. I figured after putting up an episode once a week for a year, we could go September without putting up an official episode of any kind. We apologize for that small break. I think we've been posting it all over the place, like we're on a small hiatus. We will be back in time for October, though, for spooky season. And Alex, you can say it better than I can, but we're going to space.
Space!
Going deep into space. We're doing some Coriolis, a game called Coriolis: The Third Horizon. It's a game of space mysticism and good old-fashioned ice trucking in some ways. But yeah, that'll start going up around October. They'll probably run most of October. And we have begun recording some Vampire the Masquerade stuff, but there's also a small surprise I have not talked to the guys about yet that I might try and do, because there are two Delta. We don't want to spend too much time away from Delta Green. We know it's kind of become our main game, for better or worse, right now, that people show up to listen to. And there are two Delta Green operations. One of them's a Christmas story, and the one of which I believe is all too appropriate for Valentine's Day, that I at least personally feel we should probably try and get out up into the ether before the next season kicks off. So you may actually get some canonical from Arc Dream Publishing, from the Delta Green crowd, official modules you can check out from us in the near future. But yes, look forward to Cold Front of some kind and a Valentine's Day surprise, assuming the schedule comes together for it. But yeah, that's what we got coming down the pipe. We're not going anywhere. We got plenty more stuff to do, and Janus Protocol is coming.
I am excited for all of this. Very much so. Like,
It's going to be awesome.
yeah. I actually need to come up with a new character for Janus Protocol too.
Part of why we are spending so much time away from Delta Green is to let the existing Delta Green characters cleanse from your system so they can be fully expelled and you can come up with new characters. We're not looking to kind of have the story adventures of Foxtrot Florence and Firestarter 2.0. We want new, hardy, horrible veteran players or veteran characters that are part of T-Cell, and not just part of T-Cell, but part of real T-Cell for Janus Protocol. You're not there because you've done a really good job. You're there because you've proven to be effective, and the program's pretty sure they can't just cut you loose.
I have such a character kind of already not pre-made, but like I've got a concept, and I'm so excited for this concept.
I got one too, and I'm really pumped.
We'll get there soon enough. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in for this. We hope you enjoyed it. It ran a lot longer than I think I thought it was going to, but hopefully it's been fun for you. And if you're catching this on the kind of archive video on demand of your choice, thank you for watching as well. If you're new to Negative Modifier and this is your first thing you checked out, we are sorry. I'm sure we came off as crazy people, but also go check out the podcast. We think it's pretty good. We were only spoilerific for Hawthorne's Crusade, which admittedly is a big chunk of the podcast. We got other stuff we didn't talk about, but yeah, if any of those intrigued you, go check it out. From a podcast perspective, if you enjoy the show and feel like supporting it some, we have Patreon, we have Ko-Fi. The Patreon has some kind of behind the scenes stuff. The Ko-Fi has a little bit less, but it's also kind of pay for individual things at that point. And we also have a merch store full of fine Negative Modifier merch. And we have the Malin stuff will be going away soon. It was a limited run thing. I'm going to probably take it off the store sometime the next few weeks. But probably it'll definitely be gone by the time the next set of episodes, by the time we start Coriolis. Like, it is a limited time thing. It will not be back. If you want to show your devotion to Malin, you can do so.
I'm going to go pick up a t-shirt myself, actually.
Yeah. If also you enjoy the show, thank you for listening. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. If you know someone that might be interested in what we do, please tell them. We love having more people tune into this stuff. It makes it all worthwhile. And it's always both crazy and fun hearing that other people are out there listening to us play these horrible, horrible games. Yeah, not the games are horrible, that the stories we put them through are horrible. I felt bad calling Delta Green horrible because I love Delta Green.
Yeah.
But yeah, any kind of closing thoughts for people, or?
I have nothing in particular other than, like, I'm really excited for the stuff that's coming down the pipeline. Like the Coriolis, like one shot was really nice. The Vampire Masquerade, we kind of dabbled on a little bit, and that's
It's cursed. The recording for it is cursed. Like it's the most cursed recording we've had yet so far. Yeah. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, the stuff we have coming down the pipeline is great. And again, shout outs to Charlie for coming up with all this wonderful like storyline stuff and being such a good GM. Like, I hear experiences about GMs who are really over the top or kind of shitty sometimes and things like that. And Charlie just finds a nice delicate balance with everything. And it's like it's gritty enough that we have some I guess not. I mean, enough that it's like gritty and it's really like, oh, interesting stuff, but also not to the point where it's exaggerated and just kind of feels forced and puts us in weird situations. And again, like also with like checking in on us afterwards, like when we do go into heavy topics, like, shout outs to Charlie. And like, so
he does this for free. Like, all I have to do is just show up on the same day at the same time, and then this happens constantly. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
All of this work is being put into this thing that I just get to experience for free. What?
The labor of love. It's just kind of cool finding out people listen to this. Like, not to get like, we've been charting in some interesting countries. Like, we were showing up in the charts for Ukraine and stuff like that. And personally, for me, like, charts anywhere are neat, but like finding out that people all over the world are listening to this and enjoying it and coming back week to week, it's just, I don't know about it. I'm bad with words in this instance because I'm so humbled and kind of it's just such a badass feeling of like, holy crap, like you enjoy this ridiculous thing we put out that like in some ways we'd be doing anyway, but the fact that you choose to spend time with us on a weekly basis and message us and complain about the episodes and let me know when like audio is fucked up or something so I can fix it real quick, it means just an unbelievable amount to me. Like it's one of those ones where kind of like we put an episode out every week for a year with a rain or shine type of thing, and like that wouldn't have happened if I just wasn't kind of just bowled over by how just the reception of this and kind of how positive people have been, and just kind of like weird interactions happen on Twitter where it's like, what the fuck just happened in the episode? And I'm like, yes, that is the correct response to be having. What the fuck did indeed just happen? Like, it's the fact you put your trust in us and kind of show up and listen, and yeah, again, just choose to spend some time with us once a week. It's unbelievably humbling, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah. And I mean, hell, even the work you've put in, like on the Extra Life one-shots, because you technically, when we do our goals, you do 2 campaigns in one. Because technically we could flip the switch and go from like Tales from the Loop into Delta Green in a moment's notice. So like,
yeah, it's also kind of, it's one of those things where kind of like I am fortunate enough to have an amazing group of players I play with that like encourage me through their kind of devotions, the wrong place, but kind of how into the game you are to kind of like push it and put the extra effort in, kind of do the weird stuff, and like it'd be one thing. Hawthorne's Crusade would not be Hawthorne's Crusade if it wasn't for how invested you guys were about how kind of like under its shell you got. Like this could have been done in 3 months, like kind of thing. It could have been like 5 episodes an arc or something like that. You could have just burned through it, shot everyone, top level, kind of was it satisfactory, who the hell knows type of thing. But no, it was like you guys committed and you got under the surface of it, and you got to the real point of Hawthorne's Crusade, which was, there's a guy in a basement who may or may not be a brain in a jar, and he's doing all of this, and that's a problem. Yeah, because like there's a world in which Hawthorne's Crusade ends with, we killed DJ Essence Muncher, he's probably the problem, right?
Oh. All right.
Yeah. No, but you guys at that point kind of dug in enough that you knew that DJ Essence Muncher was just kind of another pawn in a string of pawns this guy was playing with, and you would ask the right questions and kind of had figured out there's something bigger in the background, and that's the whole problem. Yeah, I'm humbled by our listeners. I'm also humbled to play with you guys with every week type of basis. Like, it's one of the highlights of my week when we get to record type of stuff, and I get to have the fun of, I get to run this, and I also get to go through and listen to it when I'm editing, where it's like, yes, I get to listen to it early, and some of the stuff I just like forget we do, and it's like, oh shit, we did do that. That's awesome. That lands way better than I thought it did. Like, yeah, it's
yeah. I have to say, I'm like for like my first, like, I guess tabletop group, like I'm honored to like play with you guys, because like it's we mesh so, because we did, like, I mean, I knew Charlie, but I didn't know anybody else prior to like jumping into this, and I think we've found a good like balance and mesh well as a tabletop group. So like shout outs to you guys as well, like, because it's just, you guys are phenomenal players and are really fun, and you know, we have a blast even on the somber moments that we have throughout episodes. Like, it's we have a good resonance, I guess, if that's the way to put it.
Somber shit wouldn't work if we weren't enjoying it, if that makes any sense. Like, it would just be kind of hacky, but no, we're all invested and we're there. Like, it sounds weird to say we're there for the dark moments, but it's like, no, you're committed in a way that not all groups get to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
On that incredibly depressing and sappy note, thank you for joining us. Your negative modifier. We got more stuff in the future. Any other closing thoughts for people that might make me cry on stream?
I want to point out that I totally agree with what you've all said. You guys are a great group of players to play with, and a great GM.
Thank you. Yes. Stay subscribed. We got more stuff coming. We look forward to seeing what you think of Coriolis, I guess.
Yeah.
Space.
Shit's dope. Like, there's some dope moments in Coriolis.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you guys.
Someday we will play a game without a standing mechanic, and Jad will overjoyce at that moment.
I'm so pissed.
Even Vampire has one.
When you whip that shit out, I was just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Gotcha again! Going crazy in 2 games now.
You need to roll some dice for a real life sanity check at this point. Just like, just have a separate tower of dice and be like, oh, Charlie's putting me through this again. Damn it. Roll the die.
I live with 2 nagging non-lethal damage, like just in this nebulous existence. All from Charlie. All from Charlie in this podcast.
Just take us out, Alex. Yeah, unless you want to say, I'm a good way of closing this up. That feels like a good place to leave off as anything.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are negative modifier. Until next time. Peace.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Later.